Okay, we're all here. Welcome to the 5 o'clock IID Board Meeting. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Mr. Ramos, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Garber, were there any actions taken in closed session?
No, Madam President.
Okay. On the approval of the agenda, I would like to pull number 7 under information, and I would like to move number 12 up to number 6 in information. With those changes, could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Please vote. Now is the time for public comments. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. You come before the podium, before the board, state your name for the record, and now is the time to come. Mr. Ramos?
Good afternoon, or good evening, I guess. My name is Tony Ramos, and I know I have 5 minutes, so I'll try to stay within those limits.
Thank you.
Some of you remember me, but I haven't been coming here for a few months because I've been battling with the Board of Supervisors and taking out the sheep peel because it doesn't really belong there. But be that as it may, that issue over there, that's why I spend most of my time over there. And I've heard that they don't like me going over there because of my pain in their rear end. But so be it. That's why there's America, because you can come and speak out on issues. And you know that public speech is protected speech. They can't do nothing about it. The Supreme Court just recently decided that even as vile and as mean as some protesters went against people that coming back from the war. And I'm not a war veteran, but I'm a Vietnam era veteran. I didn't go to Vietnam, but I was in the Air Force 4 years. Even as mean as the protester protested against people, the Supreme Court said that you can't condemn the protester because of what he says. So every speech that we speak in America, we're protected by the First Amendment and the Brown Act. And I love that because you know what? If I did this in Mexico, I think I would have been gone 10 years ago. You know, I don't think I would have been living because even with issues with water, with issues about judges, our chief PO that doesn't belong here, shouldn't be here, you know, people have other people get to you. And that's what's good and good about it. No matter how it is, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be 64 this November. And, you know, even at home, I shouldn't say this, me and my wife are running 80, 90% right now, as far as getting along, I guess. And that's good because sometimes when I was at 50 and 60, that's why my first divorce, my first marriage didn't last that long. But anyway, enough about me, and I want to come here and say hi to my board members, even though they're divided on this. You know, Stella, I read this yesterday that Kevin might be up for, and I know I shouldn't be saying because it's on the agenda, but I'll be real quick, for possible being the CEO, is it?
The general manager.
General manager for, you know, there's an old saying in the Mexican community that says, and correct me if I'm wrong, Stella, es mejor bien por conocido que mal por desconocido, which means that when you know somebody, it's better that you hire or do something about it because you know him for the good things that you know about him than hire someone that you know nothing about. And I would recommend highly that Kevin be hired. I mean, it might be a split vote. I'm not a fortune teller, but I think it might be go 3-2 or something like that. But Kevin, even when he was not high up there like he is right now, has always been good to me. Always answered my phone calls. Always helped me with In God We Trust, and allowed me to be his equal. And even now I can call him. You know, just because he went up doesn't say he forgets people like Tony or people that work for a living. But at the same time, you know, I highly recommend this gentleman. He's modest. He's energetic. Experienced. I think he's experienced because he's gone through so many other people that he's learned from. And to safeguard the interests of the IID, and to safeguard the interests of the people that vote for you people, because above you, who's up there is not the voters. We're really your bosses. We're the bosses of all of you. But at the same time, we have no say-so in voting. You guys do. That's why you represent us. And to me, Kevin's got it. He's not going to go back on his word. He's going to do the best he can to fulfill that job as a what was it again, Stella? CEO or?
General manager.
General manager, yeah. General manager. And ever since I've been coming here for the last 10 years, I've seen a couple of general managers come and leave. And I hope that, is this position for a year or 2 years, Stella?
Depends on the board. It depends on the action taken this afternoon.
But I think it'd go out as long as 2 years.
I'm looking for a 2-year contract.
Yeah, I would wish that everybody would join Stella and the public would support her and supporting Kevin.
You have 1 minute left.
Pardon me?
You have 1 minute.
Yes,
left.
and I feel that if there's anything else about Kevin that people would like to say, let them come up here and say it now. Otherwise, I fully support him. So does my family. And Kevin, I'll be giving you a call later. Thank you very much.
Okay. Anyone else would like to come and speak to the board at this time? If not, we'll close the public comment part of the meeting and turn it over to comments from board members. Director Sanchez?
No comment.
Director Desert?
No comment.
Director Menville?
Yes, thank you. On Tuesday the 10th, I attended the Veterans Appreciation Month celebration and Employer of the Year award at the Veterans Memorial Hall in Imperial. Human Resource Manager Dan DeVoy, Rosa Dominguez, and Luisa Armenta were present to receive the IID's Employee of the Year award for consistently hiring veterans. There are 226 veterans that work here at the IID, and I think Mr. DeVoy went up to Sacramento and received an award up there also, dealing with IID hiring veterans and being the Employer of the Year for that. On Thursday during the day, I went to the Coachella Valley Energy Summit held at the Palm Springs Convention Center. The IID was a sponsor of the event, which was very well attended. Topics of discussion dealt with energy, climate, sustainability, and green jobs. Our Energy Consumers Advisory Committee Chairwoman, Lupe Ramos-Watson, Mayor of Indio, spoke, as did IID Carl Stills, Assistant Energy Manager. Thursday evening, I attended Calexico's 20th Anniversary Mariachi Fiesta Popular 2011 event at the Calexico Cultural Arts Center. IID employee Antonio Rivera's 16-year-old son, Nestro, competed as a mariachi singer in the mariachi contest. Nestro did a great job of singing. Gloria Rivera was there, and she also did a great job of dancing with one of the mariachi men.
Did she sing? Did she sing as well?
No, she didn't sing. She just danced really well. So at Friday at 1 p.m., Merlin Kindwell and I gave a brief overview of IID's water history and a tour of the IID's water control room to Christina Lung and her 8 staff members from the San Diego Regional Economic Development Corporation dealing with a mega region initiative. Tour lasted about 45 minutes. They were here in the valley on a one-day tour getting acquainted with the area. And Friday evening, my wife Jenny and I attended Calexico's Mariachi Fiesta sponsorship dinner at the Don Juan Parish Hall in Calexico. And IID employee Dolores Lolita Aris' 2 grandsons dressed as vaqueros representing the IID. Both boys could twirl a rope very well. And then we also received a sponsorship plaque from the Calexico Chamber as being one of the sponsors for the event. All right, thank you.
Okay. Director Hanks?
I have nothing to add.
Mr. Kelly?
No, nothing.
Mr. Garber?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda, could I have a motion to approve, please?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Vote. Okay, moving on to information, we're going to go with item number 12, page 70 on your agenda, update on IID's vegetation management plan. And Mr. Eng, introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Directors. My name is Jose Angel. I am the Assistant Executive Officer with the State Water Quality Control Board out of Palm Desert. And I wanted to come back and take the opportunity to provide you an update, more of a regulatory update in relationship to the implementation of the revised Drain Water Quality Improvement Plan, of which the Vegetation Management Plan is an integral component. Next, please. Let me first begin by laying out some of the regulatory requirements, just for edification purposes. If you recall, back in the early 2000s, we had the regional board, our office adopted a new regulation called a TMDL. That's a total maximum daily load, to address essentially silt, the impacts that silt were causing on the receiving waters. And the main sources of silt were three: silt coming from the farm fields, silt from natural erosion, and silt from operation and maintenance of the drains. And I'm going to focus my remarks on the latter. And if you don't remember anything that I said, I do want you to remember this. The program is on track, and I'm very grateful for your staff for continuing to address our concerns. They have been very responsive, and they're in full implementation of the revised vegetation management plan. So I want to thank your staff, in particular Carlos, for his leadership, Vince Brook and his staff for stepping to the plate and addressing our concerns.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. The program has three components. We in the office, we provide some of the checks and balances. As obviously, we monitor the rivers. The IID is required to submit and implement a revised rainwater quality improvement plan, and along with that, there are two other components: monitoring and reporting. Next, please. And this kind of lays out what the IID is supposed to do. It's a brief summary of about 20 pages of regulation. It was required to send us a revised rainwater quality improvement plan to mitigate the impacts that the operation and maintenance of the drains were causing. Along with that, they were supposed to implement a monitoring program to monitor water quality in the drains and submit monitoring data on water users, basically. And on all those fronts, the last two in particular, you get an A+. And I wanted to make sure you understand that the staff has been doing an outstanding job when it comes down to monitoring and reporting. And the issue that we brought last year to your attention was the vegetation management plan. And you recall, when I came before you, I believe it was, I'm going to say October, the month prior to that, August, we had just received the vegetation management plan, and we approved it the following month. Next, please. Again, they've done a terrific job, and on time, always on time, full compliance with the monitoring requirements. So we're very pleased with that. That data allows us not just to keep track of whether or not water quality is improving, but rather focus our limited resources on addressing key problems on particular areas. Next, please. Same thing, they always provide us on time with the information for the water users, and so we're very pleased with that. We use that information for two purposes: to determine which farmers are farming, number one, and second, by process of elimination, to determine whether those farmers are participating or not in the Imperial County Farm Bureau's voluntary TMDL program. So that's why that data is essential. The Farm Bureau doesn't turn in the farmers that do not participate in the program, but we do it by a process of elimination. The Farm Bureau sends us data that tells us which farmers are in the program, and then we compare the data with the data that your staff send us. And if a farmer is farming and is not participating in the program, then we address that issue. Next, please. Again, back in August 2000, this is the meat of my presentation, and it won't take more than 3 minutes, hopefully. So back in 2010, we received the so-called and infamous vegetation management plan. It wasn't pretty how we got there, but we got it. And ever since then, your staff has been in full implementation of the plan. The plan calls for an integrated approach And by that I mean, typically, when in the past, the practice has been when somebody calls because they're having a particular drainage problem, a farmer may call, his drain is getting waterlogged. The default was for the crew to go out there and dredge the drain, regardless of what was causing the problem in the drain. And that's a reactive mode. And what the new Drain Water Quality Improvement Plan calls for a more integrated approach. Your staff now goes out there and troubleshoots what the problem in the drain is. Is it a vegetation problem? Is it a farmer problem? Is there something structural with the drain that needs to be addressed? And what is the best method to address that problem? Should we use a mechanical means to address the problem? Should we use a pesticide if it's something that is an undesirable vegetation, or some other biological mean? That's what it means, an integrated approach. And that's what's going to get you the most bang for your buck. Next, please. So since October of last year, there has been significant coordination internally, and I know that because I have participated and I've been invited to some of those meetings where the heads of your departments, from the people that operate the excavators all the way to the water division management, they've been there at those meetings, so everyone speaks the same language and everyone understands what the objectives and goals of the program are. And we're very grateful because what that tells me is that everyone is falling in line as to what the objectives are going to be. We have also, I have also met personally on more than a dozen occasions with several of your managers on a need basis. So that has also helped improve the communication between the two agencies. There have been, they have retrofitted 4 of the excavators with GPS systems. And as you probably know, once the excavators are retrofitted with the GPS systems, that allows for more precision cleaning of the drains and less damage to the drains. So they also have monthly staff training meetings. You're trying to change something that has been institutionalized for the last, I'm going to say, at least 50 years. And that's quite an undertaking. That's why the staff needs your support, because that's what you're trying to do. You're changing this reactive mode where you go out there and dredge a drain, excavate a drain, versus this integrated approach. It's a systematic approach. So next, please. Here's an example of some of the changes that we're already seeing, and we like this. There is some vegetation that is desirable on the banks of the drains because they stabilize the drain. They don't clog the drain. On the contrary, they protect the banks of the drain from erosion. And sometimes they go out there with the excavator and remove all vegetation regardless of whether or not the vegetation is good. This is good. And it tells us that the changes, although they're not proceeding as fast as some people like, they are proceeding in the right direction. So we're happy with that. Next, please. Right now, my sense is that your staff is going through that typical storming phase when you're trying to institute change. They're trying to learn the same language, speak the same language when they go out there, and particularly at ground zero, at the field level. When they look at a drain, they all need to speak the same language and make the same determination as to what the problem with the drain is and what the best solution for the drain is. So you bring people from the surveying crews to see whether there's a structural problem. You bring people from operation and maintenance, and you bring your pest specialist. That's why you hired that pest specialist, you recall? Because they're going to advise you, is this vegetation good? Should we keep it? No, we should what's the best way to get rid of it? So that's the integrated approach. The fact that you increase also the allotted amount for spraying, that's also a plus because it gives you, in particular your staff, more flexibility by being able to spray at least twice a year. That's very helpful also. So in short, we're rather pleased with the changes. Don't get me wrong, it's not peachy. We do have our differences, but the fact that we have instituted meetings at the management level, periodic meetings, not just with your staff, but also with the Farm Bureau, it has provided for a forum for us to discuss issues and have frank discussions at our level before they escalate. So we don't blindside each other, and so we can address issues in a constructive way. And I think that's going to help us more than anything else. Next, please. The big issue that your staff is going to be facing in the next coming months is developing metrics, how to measure progress. We believe we can be instrumental in that, in providing some advice, and also we believe the Farm Bureau may be instrumental in providing advice to your staff, but it's going to be just that, advice. I really believe that they know what they're doing, your staff, and I really believe that they deserve your continued support, not just at the policy level, but where the rubber meets the road with the resources. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions or comments from the board? I'd like to thank you, Mr. Angel, for coming to talk to us.
Thank you.
This conversation today is a very pleasant one, unlike ones we had prior. And I would invite you to come back in another 6 months and keep the board updated. I appreciate that if you will.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We will.
Yeah, well, Jose, I appreciate you coming down and working with Carlos and the Water Department.
Thank you, Mr. Manville.
Brooks, and hopefully we'll get everything moving in the right direction.
We are going in the right direction.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We will now go on to item number 6 under information. Update in Centennial Celebration to be held July 22nd, 2011. That's page 39 on the agenda. Rosa Maria Gonzalez.
Good afternoon, President Mendoza, members of the board and staff. I just want to give you an update on what we are doing with the Centennial Celebration. As you may well know, we have scheduled it for Friday, July 22nd, beginning at 6 p.m. And going through 9 p.m. We have a nice dinner planned for the evening, and also a program that will begin at 7:30 p.m. We've got a committee made up of employees, and I would say they're very talented in numerous ways, and I believe I've provided you with a list of those employees who are participating on the committee. They've all been given roles and responsibilities on what they will be handling, and of course there's always room for community involvement on that committee. We are also inviting a number of dignitaries, and we are not at this point in a position to reveal who they are. We certainly want to keep you the suspense there. So we will be revealing who those may be later on as the event moves forward. But we are planning a very nice program. We are working to have it at the Casa de Mañana building, and we are looking at how we are going to be making that venue inviting, and also providing for some educational opportunities so that the public can be aware of the very important achievements that the district has accomplished over the last 100 years. And let's see, I think that is all I have for you today. Are there any questions?
No, I just noticed on your list of planning committees, you have Director Desert representing the board. My advice to you, make him work. Okay? You have plenty of work.
Well, Mr. Desert, I certainly invite you to come to one of the meetings, and we will definitely, it's our understanding that you have a very wide scope of the history of the Imperial County and the IID, and we would love to be able to pick your brain and get some of your ideas on how we could present some of this beautiful history to the community.
Yeah, thank you. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Comments from the board?
I got a couple of questions. You've allowed a budget of $25,000 for the celebration, but for the dinner part, you're going to be charging for the dinner, or how's the dinner part going to work?
No, the dinner is free to the public. IID is hosting the dinner.
Well, how are you going to, you have down here that you're going to have 800 to 1,000 attendees.
Yes,
And if
that is
that's
correct.
free, how do you know that you're not going to end up with more coming, or how you're going to handle that?
Okay, we've taken a look at the venue. The venue can accommodate 600 people seated at a dinner table. And we are also looking at making accommodations to perhaps have an outside tent for the overflow. And so we are going to provide a head count. I do believe if that we get a very prominent dignitary that we are anticipating may attend, that of course the attendance is going to grow. So we're going to make sure we make accommodations for any overflow we may have. But we are going to need to give the caterer a head count prior to the event so that they know how much food to be able to purchase and prepare. So once, we're going to serve everybody who gets there, but once we run out, if it's beyond the anticipated number that we have, then there's not a whole lot we can do with that.
Wouldn't you be better off? I know, like when the county had their 100-year celebration a couple of years ago, they had it at the Barbara Worth, and I think they paid to go to that. But my question is, if you're going to have a free deal, but you're not quite sure, wouldn't you be better off to advertise, like at least for people who wanted to come to call in?
Oh, the RSVP?
They're going to RSVP that they're going to show up. And I wouldn't want to get in a situation, because it's a ratepayer organization.
Exactly.
Somebody ends up getting turned away. They come and they get turned away, and then we've got an issue with that.
Yeah, I understand that. With the RSVP, though, you still run that risk, because a lot of people will just show up and not call in, and so there may still be that problem. But we can certainly implement such a mechanism into the program, and to help ensure that everyone who wants to attend is served. But we still will run that risk, especially if we have somebody who is of high prominence. We will get probably people beyond any RSVP number that we may give to the caterer.
Rosa Maria, is it right that the caterer is actually an employee group?
Yes.
And I would think, Director Menville, that the summer would be the difference between the county's observance of a centennial and ours would be that ours is on July 22nd.
Yeah.
Yeah, the heat is definitely going to be a challenge. And
so 1,000 people would be probably, very optimistic.
Yeah, well, at the county's event, I think they had 600 people that showed up at the.
That's what I heard. They had about 600 people and paying people.
They charged for that, didn't they?
They did.
Yes, they did.
It was a pretty dressed up event, as I remember.
And then I think I know the Chinese were a part of that, and I think they hosted some of that also.
They did.
That's great.
And one other aspect of this, Rosa Maria's committee is working diligently on this, but the thing that the public ought to know about, and I'm sure we'll drive home the point, is that everyone who attends will receive a lithograph of an original painting that is being done by local artist Pat Waters, and that also is free.
I had to pay for mine when the county had their celebration.
Yeah.
That was
$150. I bought one.
Yes, I did. Yeah. So.
The event is fully.
And the painting itself will hang in J1.
Yeah.
This is really cool. We're doing this for the ratepayers. It's very casual.
Yes.
Come in your shorts and T-shirts and flip-flops. It's very casual. It's a celebration of the IID, your IID.
Exactly, and the food is going to be fantastic. We're planning some barbecued ribs, so I think we're going to attract a lot of folks. Even though the heat is going to be a bit of a challenge, I think we're going to get some good numbers.
I also want to commend Rosa Maria for having the good judgment to overrule me. I wanted to have this event outside, and we were going to have it right outside the J1 building in that open sort of green place. And
listen to women, Mr. Kelly.
It turns out that that would not have been the way to go. So
We would have been planning for maybe 30 people at that
Right.
point. True. Including myself. Are there any other questions? I'd be glad to answer it, and I'd be glad to come back in the future.
Can you come back,
with an update.
give us a monthly
Absolutely.
update from now till July?
Yes, we're getting a lot of developments. Every time the group meets, they're coming back with ideas and a lot of the footwork that they've been doing, so I'd be glad to.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, no comments. We will move on. Item number 7 has been pulled from the agenda till a future meeting. We're moving on to item number 8, Energy Department General Matters. Dr. Koch, that's page 48 on your agenda.
Yes, Madam President. 2 small items. At the last board meeting, Director Hanks asked for an update on the Hakumba line, which I've always pronounced Chakumba line, which is why I didn't know what it was. And I responded to that in a memo that went out. Also, Director Menville requested, based on his conversation with people at the Coachella Renewable Energy Summit, requested some information on the district's interest in biogas facilities here in the district, and a memo has gone out to the board on that also. So that's all I have.
Okay. Moving on then to item number 9, page 49 on your agenda, Community Lighting Program, who's Sabrina Barber is the presenter. And this is for information.
Good afternoon, Madam President and members of the board. Sabrina Barber, Assistant Manager of the Energy Management Strategic Marketing Unit. I'll give her an opportunity to get the presentation up. Thank you, Diana. Originally, the program concepts were brought to you on the March 8th meeting, but I want to quickly review the programs that are associated with the service agreement request today. That's the Small Business Direct Install Program and the Community Lighting Program. I also want to provide a brief update on the new programs that have already come online. That would be the Swimming and Savings Pool Pump Rebate Program, as well as a duct replacement pilot program. In the March presentation, the Swimming and Savings Program was originally slated for implementation during the 3rd quarter. However, due to some issues with the procurement process associated with both the direct install and the community lighting program, we did bump these up to go ahead and get them kicked off. So it was started on April 20th, and it consists of 2 tiers. The natural replacement is essentially just the same $200 incentive that was provided under the Energy Rewards Prescriptive program, and it provides for single speed and 2-speed pool pump replacements or incentives for natural replacement. However, what's new with the Swimming and Savings is we are offering a higher incentive for early replacement of operable single speed pool pumps, and that incentive goes from $200 up to $350 for qualifying pool pumps. A pre-inspection is required, and that's necessary so that we could verify the eligibility that it is indeed operating and that it's a single-speed pool pump. Just in the first 2 weeks, we received 20 requests for pre-inspections, and that was before we had even started any of the marketing. So we're already seeing a lot of interest in this program. We will be sending out direct mailers. We've been provided by some of the municipalities lists of all the residences that have pools, so we'll be sending out a mailer directly to them so that they are aware of the program.
What is your budget for this particular program?
This particular program, we have a budget of well, actually, this is lumped in with the energy rewards, so what's our budget for? $800,000. And that's actually split between the different incentives types. So there's some that's going to be for the pool pumps, and then some that are for some of the other appliances. Is that correct? Yes.
What are those?
So how much are for the pool pumps?
We've associated, what about 400,000 specific to pool pumps.
How much do those replacement pumps run?
They can run, it depends on what type they go with, but it looks like they're anywhere from $1,200 up to $1,800, depending on what brand and the type that they purchase. We anticipate that this particular program will provide approximately 10% of our AB 2021 energy efficiency goals required for 2011. We also implemented a duct replacement pilot program. As you're aware, the air conditioning accounts for a majority of our residential peak load. So the intention of this pilot program is to verify the savings associated with replacement of an entire duct system. It consists of testing, replacing, and sealing the system. And this also satisfies one of the requirements in AB 1890 that we have some sort of research, development, and demonstration project within, or that's being used, that public benefits is being used towards.
What is your budget for this particular program?
This one's just $10,000. It's a small program just because we want to, because it is research and development. We want to keep a close eye on it. And
so how do you select the ratepayers that participate in this program?
this one was just based on information that we had from a previous program on one of the new high efficiency units that had been installed through the low income energy efficiency program. So we've taken that. The customer did not have the funds available to upgrade their duct system, so we took that particular customer, and we're using that for the basis for this program.
Do you have any questions, Director?
No.
Penfield?
No.
Okay, go on.
Okay, we also implemented or began our Think Light summer campaign. You've probably already heard some of the radio spots that have been running. It'll run from May through August 2011. We're using local media, the radio, billboards, newspapers, and of course our website. And we've sent out information in our circuit. Essentially, this serves as public awareness campaign to help reduce the summer load during the peak hours. This also fulfills one of the requirements with our WEC reliability standards.
And what is your budget for this program?
This one was what?
Part of our marketing.
I'm sorry? No more than 20,000 for the marketing budget. And as stated in the March 2008 program or presentation, we'll be rolling out more programs in the third and fourth quarter. We will be bringing within the next 2 board meetings, we should be bringing the AC replacement, that's the facility upgrades, and also the ice bear installations for information.
Okay, on your AC trade-up program, what is the amount of the rebates you're
Up to $2,500 per unit.
Does that cover both residential and commercial, or is that just residential?
Residential and small commercial if it's a residential type unit.
It would be like 5 tons or less? Or
Right.
what? And when you say, what did you mean by up to $2,500 rebate?
In order to make it a cost-effective program, for it to pass our cost-benefit analysis, we tied the amount per unit to be $500. That way, we're not paying $2,500 for a 2-ton unit. It's broke down by the tonnage. If it's a 2-ton unit, you'll get a maximum of $1,000, or if it's a 5-ton, then you would get the full $2,500
So
rebate.
you're going higher this year than you did a year
Previously,
ago.
correct.
It was like $100 per ton.
Right.
And now you're going, how much per ton?
This would be up to $500
Per ton?
per ton.
So if a 5-ton unit, if a guy's going to trade in a 5-ton unit and get a new one, that's roughly probably about $5,000 for a 5-ton unit.
Right.
So then the
5,000 to 6,000.
IID rebate would cover half of that cost?
That's correct.
And how much?
And it has to be certain units, 12 SEER or lower.
And then how much money is out there for those rebates before you run out of money?
What's our budget for that one? And we'll be bringing back a separate presentation for this before we implement it that will go into detail.
When will that start?
We're looking for third quarter, so we're anticipating that it probably will start by July 1st. And that's $1.1 million for that budget.
Why did you go up in the price per tonnage from a year ago?
Just trying to provide incentives for replacement of the AC based on trying to target specifically the residential peak load.
You know, that's fine, but it seems to me that if we have we have these funds. It's kind of inconsistent when for 1 year you pay $100 per ton, and then the following year you go up to $500 per ton or $1,000 per ton. You know, that's quite a difference there. And I think one of the members of the ECAC brought that up, that in order to give incentives for the ratepayers to move up to more efficient air conditioners, it should be a higher rebate, like what you're doing now. And it's I'm glad you're going up to a higher number, but I wish that had happened in the past as well.
She bought our unit last year.
Oh, well, no, I did it. No, and actually I did. I did buy my unit last year. But beside the point, Mr. Luis Sendejas from the ECAC, he brought this up as well, that we are hoping to get our ratepayers to be more efficient in the use of electricity. Mm-hmm. And to me, and we all need air conditioners. We all use air conditioners. To me, this is a really important program, and we should try to make it as attractive as possible to our customers. You know, whether you buy it a year ago or 2 years ago, it doesn't matter. But anyway, that was brought to my attention by Mr. Sendejas, and I see his point. Okay. You know, these other programs are great, but these air conditioners, they affect every family in the Imperial Valley, Agreed. Whether you're low income, high income, middle income. And to me, you should this makes more sense to offer rebates or higher rebates, more rebates to our ratepayers, because the AC always seems to go out in the middle of the summer.
Well,
go on.
Did we not get a lot of interest last year?
In the air conditioning?
Yeah.
We had some, but there's other criteria that are required to qualify for this program. We'll still have our regular rebate through the energy rewards, but this is going to be requiring the installation of a high efficiency, higher than the prescriptive rebate program, which is our energy rewards, and that's where this incentive comes in. And you also, in order to qualify for this, you need to have an existing lower SEER air conditioning that is operable. So
I'm guessing these units cost more in general as well.
Yes, they do.
So what is the number of the SEER for the rewards program?
For the regular rewards program is 14.5, correct?
And for this?
16.
Well, there's not that much difference.
I have another question. Are you when the ratepayer comes in and provides an invoice, are we going to direct them to a single source, or they come in, which there's about 20 AC companies in the valley.
Right.
You're going to accept wherever they bought it from.
Right.
Okay.
Are there any limitations on this as to how many times an individual can participate in the 1 year?
Yeah, we do have one once per, is it 3 years? Yes, it's 3 years.
Well, so a guy with a bunch of rental properties can't come in and participate in this with his rental properties?
If he has different, well, actually, this would have to be through the customer account. Our contract account is whoever's residing there at the residence, unless the landlord is paying the facility. So it's all tied, all our programs are tied to the actual contract account holder.
So a manager, owner of properties, rental properties, could run these applications through his renters?
Yeah, he could, potentially.
He could
have
get
the
multiple
customer
units.
submit for the application.
I just maybe be cautious with that to verify that this game system isn't being gamed by anybody for them.
Okay, and we'll bring this back to you before actually implementing it, so we can go through in detail the program and have it all available for you.
Thank you.
I had talked to Dr. Koch about the ice bear installations, those ACs, and we're going to go forward with those.
Okay.
I mean, we are, aren't we? We had talked about
That's going to
maybe
be our recommendation to you, madam.
that you can install 25 of those.
25 at this point, and we're doing it in combination with the
HVAC replacement.
IID replacement of air conditioners at our facilities, other than the J1 and other other than the facilities at Imperial that that will likely be replaced with the new building.
What I would ask, Ms. Barber, is when you bring this back for approval on the ice bear installations, bring us some more information regarding that technology. I'm still, you haven't convinced me that it can work here in the Imperial Valley, so bring us more data, who's using them, their track record and so forth, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is that on the ice bear? Mm-hmm. Well, I know you gave a presentation at the ECAC at the first of the month, and you've got them on the La Quinta building up there, right?
Yes, sir. Ice Bear has installed five ice bears on the La Quinta building that if the board does not approve the approval, then we don't have to pay for them. So those 5 are operating. President Mendoza asked me specifically how did they perform during the summer. They weren't installed last summer, so we don't have any experience with them here during the summer months.
Hence my concern.
But they are installed throughout Riverside County, and I believe there's one at the prison at this point.
There's one at the prison, and there's also one at the El Centro Regional Hospital.
And those were installed before the summer?
Yes.
So
Those
what
are
is the history
older.
of those? How long?
We'd have to pull the...
Okay, can you bring that information to the board, please?
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, and going back to agenda, the actual service agreement that's on for item number 9, this service agreement is related to our community lighting program. It essentially provides outdoor lighting that's programmed to operate solely from dusk to dawn. The service agreement would cover the energy assessment of the facility, which is essentially the audit, energy audit. It includes the light fixture itself with the protective shield and the cost for installation. As we mentioned before, this particular program has been offered by other utilities as graffiti
What is your
control.
budget for this program?
This budget is not to exceed $241,000.
How many businesses do you think you'll be able to service with this?
I believe we had
budget?
236. Yes, 236.
And are they throughout the Imperial Valley?
And the La Quinta, Riverside County. We've actually, this program's being launched in the city of El Centro. We've already been in discussions with the El Centro Police Department to determine if they were interested, and they're very excited about this program. And also the city of Indio. That's where we're going to kick them off. So.
Do you plan to do this also for the other cities?
We would
in the
like
Imperial
to,
Valley?
based on the interest, kind of rolling it out and seeing how well it works. Then we'll roll it out to surrounding or the neighboring communities.
Okay, thank you.
Is this similar to the lighting? Like I know out at where my mother is, we have a light that we pay the IID $17 a month. This kind of security light they put.
Is that all you pay?
Other people have. That's what the charge is. I think it's a standard charge.
I think that's a larger light that's on top of, similar to a power pole. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's on a
Yeah,
pole, and they put it on a pole. It's a big light, and I think it's just a standard $17 a month is what they charge.
Yeah, no,
It's
this is a
security
smaller
light.
one. It's a wall pack that's mounted typically on the facility itself. There would not be a separate installation of a pole with it.
How much light does it throw out?
It's a 100-watt light. I believe I have the specs here. I can provide a copy for you if you'd like.
It's roughly equivalent to a small street light. So when you put it out, I think we're using low-pressure sodium this year.
It's a metal halide.
Metal halide. It's very bright. It will stand up to most pistol shots. It will not stand up to a rifle shot. And I'm sorry, but it really, that is important.
We have lights being shot by kids with BB guns.
BB guns, that's why we requested the protective
areas
shields.
that the police in particular are interested in installing these are areas in which there's graffiti and other activity that people would like to chase other places. The net result is that if you do put a cheap or non-protected light, they do get shot out. These do not.
But this is a solar, though, right?
I'm sorry?
Works off of solar, right?
No, this is wired into the house. It's just programmed so that it operates off-peak, the dusk to dawn.
The electricity off the house, but basically due to the graffiti problem, the IID picks up the bill on it?
No, the customers will pay the bill. We're just covering the energy assessment, the light fixture itself, as well as the installation services.
So what,
In other words,
for 100 watt or less, when it comes on, then in a year's time, what's the extra cost to the electricity bill to the homeowner then?
I think we figured 15.
How much is it
15.
per month? Okay.
What's the budget again for this, Sabrina?
This was not to exceed $241,000. This particular service agreement.
It says $235,000 on page 54. I asked you all these questions. You had them here for us.
That may have been from the previous, that was our estimated budget for it, but once the service agreement came in, the contracted amount was for $241.
All right, cool.
This RFP was originally posted in December 2010. At that time, we only received one bid. We went back out to bid in hopes of obtaining more solicitations. However, again, we just got the one bid, so we went ahead and awarded in 2001 or in April of 2011. The bidder is Global Power Group of Lakeside. We contacted some of the local vendors after the solicitation was done just to get some feedback on why they hadn't solicited or they hadn't submitted proposals, and several of them said that they were too busy. One said that there was a conflict of interest, and another one felt that the RFP was too vague, which was a little bit surprising considering we spec'd out the actual fixtures to be installed. So again, this service agreement is not to exceed $241,580, and we will be bringing that back for action at the May 31st meeting.
31st. Okay. Well, you're also on item number 10, page 61.
Correct. And this service agreement is for the Open for Business. It's a small commercial direct install program. Essentially, this program will offer free energy efficiency upgrades to small and mid-sized customers up to $250,000. This service agreement, or $2,500. Yeah, that'd be a heck of a deal. This service agreement, the contract will cover the assessment of the facility as well as upgrades within these 4 different categories. We have lighting, and the focus is primarily going to be on lighting upgrades. We also have the HVAC, refrigeration, and then other small miscellaneous categories. All of these have been pre-approved, which ones we will compensate. And then the other includes window film. It includes some appliance timers, LED exit lights, window film, small things like that.
And you'll bring this back on the 31st?
This will come back on the 31st as well. We had 2 respondents on this on our original posting. We posted in December, but one of them was disqualified as they didn't attend the mandatory meeting. So we rebid in hopes of getting additional proposals, and we selected Synergy. So this one's going to be kicked off in La Quinta and also in the city of Imperial. Again, we estimate approximately 10% of our goals for this year will come from this program, and both service agreements will be brought back in at the 31st meeting.
Sabrina, did you have any communication with the local contractors on this particular bid also, as you discussed on the other?
Yes, we did. And some of them felt that, well, actually, the majority of them felt that they were not qualified to handle this particular type of the program. So both of our respondents were both out of town, and they both have done large-scale programs for other utilities. So they're very well-versed in direct install small commercial programs.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you tried to give the business to local contractors here in the Valley, and you did reach out to them, and if they can't do it, they can't do it.
And we'll continue to do that. I mean, that's our first order of business. We'd like to, bring in local vendors where we can, so.
That's true. Any comments or questions?
Any questions?
No? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Moving on to item number 11, page 69 on your agenda. Water Department General Matters. Mr. Villalon.
Thank you, Madam President. I do want to note that the good collaboration we have evolved with the Regional Water Board is primarily due to 2 people, Steve Charlton and Vince Brook. They've been involved with vegetation management program in its evolution to this point. So, you should please thank them. We haven't always had good relationships with the Regional Water Quality Control Board, as Jose Angel has various times said. Couple items. On water use, we are a little bit below our projected annual approval order, about 11,000, 12,000 acre feet to date. The cool weather and wind may affect our orders. Hopefully it'll drop them down a little bit. We are well above last year's to this date, about 180,000, although we were well below the approved order for last year. So hopefully we'll hang in there and plus or minus 10, 20,000 acre feet and use our full allotment without going over too much at the end of the year. But we'll be tracking that. One other small item, at the May 3rd meeting, there were questions on the securities and claims flooding reports. There were 5 flooding reports. I did ask division heads Mike Pacheco and Henry Dolente to give me a little detail as to what the basis of the flood events were. There were 5 flood claims during the first quarter of the year, 2 related to drainage issues, 1 related to a canal lining problem, and 2 related to delivering water on the wrong gate. So there's a little bit of a miscoordination, maybe misentry in the system. We do have some maintenance issues on drainage areas, but also in one of the drainage events, we just had too much tailwater in the system, which backed up water into in an individual's field, then not allowing his field to drain properly. So there's some maintenance issues, and there's some water operations coordination issues we run into occasionally.
So none of this flooding was due to the automated gates, correct?
Not at this point. Not the ones on the list. We did have a flooding issue with a gate off of South State, I believe, that we're taking care of, and I don't think that's showing up here because I don't believe that there was a claim, but we'll see if there is.
Okay.
Hey, Carlos, the large claim that you had, there was almost, I think it was 59,000 with Ralph Taylor. Was that is that the issue, or the water backed up in the field, or you know what that was?
According to the division report, it says that they think that there was too much water in the drain pipeline. At the Oasis, at the Spruce 10, the drain servicing that is partially piped, so there's capacity problems in the drain pipeline itself.
So what, the water backed up and caused damage to the crop?
According to the division head, it says he doesn't think there was much crop damage, but we'll see after the evaluation, see what it really is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are you done?
And that's all I have,
Okay.
unless you have any other questions.
Questions
Are
or
you, just one
comments?
other quick question, are you having any more trouble with the buoys on the All-American with the high flow and the trash?
There is quite a bit of maintenance activity being done. We're cataloging that, and we'll be reporting on
All right,
any
thank you.
structural or maintenance issues we have with the buoys, and we have quite a few. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Moving on to item number 13, page 71 in your agenda, update on groundwater storage sites. Mr. Brook?
Good afternoon, directors. Let me see if this works. Good. Thank you. Brief update today. I have 2 items I want to run by you today. One is to give a brief update. Back on March 29th, I presented a workshop where we had identified 4 storage sites, 3 in Coachella, 1 in East Mesa. At the end of that workshop, I stated that this was far from the last information that we'd have coming forward on groundwater storage, so this is a brief update today. Also, I'm seeking direction or input from the board or the general manager on I've kind of made a recommendation that I'd like to proceed on further study with more qualified experts for groundwater on East Mesa and Painted Canyon. So the update is the last month I've spent most of my time investigating, let me change this, focused on East Mesa. I pulled a lot of internal data. I actually did find 2 groundwater models, one from the 1950s, another one as late as 1996. Like other studies that we have floating around, it's very high level, but it doesn't get into the specifics of what we would call aquifer properties, where we could identify a site and actually know that we could put the water in and get the water out. So I'm continuing to go through the files and through the records and what we have. I've made some local visits with local landowners. Willie Simmons and his son, I went out to their property out there on the other side of the dunes, and we looked out there. Going through the records, there was Elston Grubaugh's name and Jesse Silva's name came up quite often with test programs and trials that they done out on the old Coachella Canal. So I plan to have interviews with them to try to find out what the results of those are and what they got out of that. But basically, I've pulled a lot of information together. I have stacks of it. And I am to the point now where I think we're ready to have some experts look at what we have, maybe do an analysis on what we would need to move forward on East Mesa or Painted Canyon. I have the information available to write really good scopes of work that we could put it out to bid to different geotechnical companies. And so I'm bringing that before the board and asking for feedback or direction on which sites you might prefer me to look at, or if you have preferences.
Let me start first. Mr. Brook, did you receive a copy of the letter from the Imperial Valley Vegetable Growers Association?
No.
Sent by Mr. Cox, the president?
No, I didn't.
His concern is that we should seek a pre-approval letter from the Department of Interior so that we can store and remove water from East Mesa. Is that required before we do anything, before we even spend money on scoping the projects?
I think it'd be wise.
Well, that's a good point.
I think it'd be wise.
Thank you, Larry.
Yeah. There's the...
Pre-approval's not required to do the types of analysis we're talking about. Pre-approval is not necessarily required to do anything. There may be a dispute. We do have neighbors that may dispute our right to store and recover, and that's something that we address both in open and obviously in closed session. But is it required? No. And I'm not sure that it would even be given if we sought it.
Do you need approval to take water out of Bureau ground?
You're talking about, oh, I didn't know you were talking about specifically Bureau ground. I thought
We don't know where we're going. If you're looking to take water out of Bureau ground, you need to...
if we're looking to do work on water on, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you were talking, obviously if you're going to be doing work on ground that belongs to someone else, you're going to need to get approval, yes. I misunderstood. I thought you were talking about approval in general from the federal government to store water.
No. Taking water out of Bureau ground. Is there enough private ground out there to just move on private ground and not have to get involved with the Bureau?
The reason why I said I thought it'd be wise is because I think there's a couple of issues that will come into play out there. One is the Colorado River water counting surface. I brought it up at the last meeting. I'm not sure where the boundaries are. It's probably on the east side of the sand dunes, but we would just want to make sure. If we're dealing with BLM ground, we don't know where where a location would be, so we don't know what ground we'd be dealing with. But I do know that they were sitting in the audience at the last meeting, so I know that they're aware of it.
Vince, if I might.
Sure.
I think the big problem with East Mesa is that there's just too much ground.
Right.
It's just so vast an area. So really what you'd be doing if the board were inclined is investigating East Mesa and determining the most viable site.
And that could be private property, could be the Bureau's property.
Could be.
And we don't know until we,
Right.
And Vince is right. This is a live topic of conversation with both the Bureau and the other Southern California water agencies.
any other questions? Director Hanks.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask on the analysts, Kevin, what was it, like 350,000? What was the first analyst? Was 350,000 and
321.
Okay.
And that was basically for the first phase, which basically included exactly kind of what I laid out. There would be a review of all current data. We would add any areas or locations that we felt needed to be added into that research. They would know whether the groundwater models we have are sufficient for what we want to do. I think that the sense is that our work now that we have is somewhat dated and not very specific. And I think you can see that, at least as far as East Mesa is concerned. Nobody in any study at this point has been willing to put even an annual estimate on what they think we can get out of it. It's all just been a million acre feet possible storage. But to get down to a specific site where we know we can put the water in, get the water out without it moving south or moving towards the valley, those are the specifics we need to know. And that takes somebody beyond my understanding of what we have right now to do that.
Director Hanks?
Yeah, I've got a question for you, Mr. Brooks.
Yes, sir.
Are you having to start from scratch looking up all this information, or some of our veteran staff, are they bringing forth information to you?
Yeah, that was I went to asking after you and I visited, and I have pulled tons of files, and I did find some more, and I did find that one study that was done, this latest groundwater model. But again, that groundwater model is basically a management tool for a water balance for the whole valley. It has a lot of good data in it, but nothing quite specific enough to determine what we can do out on East Mesa for groundwater storage. So they've been helpful, yes.
Okay. Have you received a copy of the Colorado River Water Underground Storage and Recovery Study? Is that part of yours? From June 1988. That was prepared for the Colorado River Board of California.
Was that the pilot program in the Coachella Canal?
That was one of 4 that they ran, and they did models in 4 different areas and projecting sustainability of water over 50 years.
I have gone over 2 of the 88, 87 studies, and I still have several files to go through, so I haven't run across that yet.
Okay, that one has, I think it's probably a little more in depth than what I've heard you mention from some of the others. You might want to get a copy of that one.
I probably still have 10 files to go through.
Okay.
I'm far from done.
And I think probably maybe some information there before because it sounds to me like you're looking for an area to kind of concentrate on, and there has been some studies.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was around the Pilot Knob area, and the East Mesa, the Unlined Canal, and also the North Sandhills.
I did see those.
Okay.
And I will. I'm not recognizing the name you're bringing forward, but I will look for that.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Comments?
What does that report look like, Jim?
should give them a copy of it.
I'll send an email.
Okay. Continue, please.
Okay.
If you don't have the copy, I've got this copy, but I want it back.
I'll make a copy.
Yeah, because, and the reason I'm being a little bit terse right now, and it's not
Sure.
directed at you.
Sure.
I've been chasing this groundwater deal for 4 years, trying to get information. And I feel like I've just been given a runaround. What's available, how much salt's in the water, and where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finding out, doing the same thing you're doing, looking through records and stuff, that there's been an enormous amount of tests done out there.
Right.
And I don't want to see us go and pay, another large sum of money to do another test when there's information available.
Right.
And it's just confusing to me that it's not coming forward to you.
Director Hanks, I'm told by Ms. Rivera that she's located that same study, so she has a
Okay.
copy she can make available to
Okay,
us.
thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. I've kind of picked East Mesa and Painted Canyon to possibly move forward on with these studies, mostly because they offer the greatest amount of capacity potential for IID. Painted Canyon needs a simple nod from Coachella Valley Water District to do a groundwater quality study up in that area before we can move forward there. I have, again, good information to write a scope of work to have that done. East Mesa needs a lot of geotechnical and hydrological analysis, and that's based on what I have now. And again, my research is far from over with. But I think we are closely approaching the point where you would want an expert in groundwater, hydrology, and geotechnical service to be able to look at this stuff and tell us where we're at. And that's it.
Yeah, just one more. The letter, if I remember right, from the vegetable growers also talked about storage at Lake Mead. And I know that's been an issue. And there's over the years, 30 years or whatever, they've been looking at storage or more, we have been blocked from storage, and I think a lot of it has to do with the rights to the underuse and how you would calculate and so forth. But the situation is so tight in the Southwest that there is enormous amounts of storage potential there, and I think that also, I would prefer to kind of pursue that, forget Painted Gorge, and take a revisit and rehash storage at Lake Mead, and also the East Mesa. Those would be my preference.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to have, Mr. Garber, would you have some comments on the vegetable growers letter? They say, however, the best option is Lake Mead. If QSA is opened back up for further negotiations, we would hope this would be a priority. You have any comments on that? That's in the first paragraph.
Well, I'd probably defer to Mr. King, but I think we're always trying to increase our ability to store it at Mead. It's an uphill battle. It's something that's discussed on a regular basis, and I think he's probably better suited to address it if he wants to than I am. Nobody's talking about something that we don't all agree. We'd like to improve our ability to store up there.
What's holding us back?
What's holding us back is the fact that there are a lot of agencies that have gotten ahead of us. And again, I mean, I think Mike's better suited to tell you where that is
King,
right
would
now.
you please come forward?
But we talk about it regularly.
Storage behind Lake Mead is a very touchy subject on the 7 basin states, I will tell you that. We did get the approval, as you know, a number of years ago to store some ICS water, intentionally created surplus water, in Lake Mead, as Southern Nevada did, and Metropolitan Water District. Metropolitan Water District is the only one in their Section 5 contracts, and also if you go back to the 1932 agreement, that has the ability to store in Lake Mead according to their contracts.
To what amount can they store?
The limit wasn't set in those contracts. In the ICS, they can store up to 400,000 acre feet a year with a maximum of 1.2 million acre feet behind Lake Mead.
And we can only store 25,000?
That's correct. No, we can score 50.
Oh, 50.
50,000. We get 25 in any one year, up to a maximum of 50,000 as we go with particular projects.
Have you stored any water there?
Yes, we have. We've stored there on 2 different occasions. We stored 1,000 acre feet on the pilot program, and then we stored 12,000 acre feet 2 years ago. And one of the things is when I was first put onto the task of being on the Basin States by Mr. Silva, that they wanted a voice there that was always the same, I went to a meeting in Arizona, the first meeting I was at, and they were talking about storage behind Lake Mead, and Met was doing this and Met was doing that, and I asked John Carter, I says, well, why can't we do that? And I didn't know all these agreements and different things as we talked about. I was thrown to the wolves. John said, why don't you ask? And I did. And boy, you thought I would just pull a rifle out and threaten everybody. But Bob Johnson agreed with me. And he said, why can't the Ag Agency store water behind Lake Mead? And that put this whole process off about 6 months, having to go through to finally there was lots of meetings on the Basin States issues about intentionally created surplus. Then we had numerous meetings with MWD, which did not want us to store water. John and I met with them for a meeting in San Diego at one point to try to convince them it was the thing to do. They walked in with a bunch of demands, and in 10 minutes, John and I got up and left. And they sat there with their mouths open. They did come back to the table, and this is how we got the 50,000 acre feet, and with another additional 50,000 that we actually can store in Met's system in Diamond Valley. So we have a total of 100,000, and it's the same rules apply with Lake Mead, actually with Met's system. A little harder to get it back if they're in a shortage. We have to go through that issue and come back to the table. It's not something that the other basin states are much willing to do. There's even Mexico would like to store some of their what they call intentionally created unused not ICMA, intentionally created Mexican apportionment, excuse me. And right now the basin states aren't too. That's been ongoing for 4 years, and so they're still working on that issue, even to let Mexico also into this title. It's not something that is on the table. We can definitely ask, but being there, done that situation, I know that it's not something that is accepted. We thought the 50,000 gets our foot in the door, and there's been promises even by the Bureau and Metropolitan as we move forward to have more intentionally created surplus of water. And those have to be approved programs. They can take their water and leave it in Lake Mead and do some switching around and say that they spent money somewhere else. They get to use our entitlement, for example, as storage. We can't take unused entitlement at this point, and that's something that we're having to continue to try to work on, that if we can store unused entitlement someplace else and we get that right, then eventually, hopefully, we'll be able to make that story that we can store unused entitlement in Lake Mead with some limitations. Right now, Met gets 400,000, actually 375, and then up to 1.2 million acre feet, and then they have to stop. So we're at 50. It's not where we want to be, but right now it's all intentionally created. That means we got to spend money to put it there. Right now, we do not have the ability to store unused entitlement is what we'd all like to do. And you still have a staff that still tries to work for that and brings it up every now and then off the cuff. But we're not getting any traction there at this point. But it's not something that we're forgetting about.
So we have 50,000 acre feet of potential, but it's not. We can't put unused entitlement in there.
No.
So the 1,000 acre feet and the 12,000 acre feet that we've already put in there, what did we ever end up doing with it?
Okay, the 1,000 acre feet was it was the first year that we created the overrun in the 3.1. We were 18,000 acre feet over our 3.1, and according to the IOPP rules and ICS rules that are put in place, if you have an overrun, the first thing that's tapped is your ICS account. So that 1,000 acre feet reduced our overage down to 17, and then we had to do fallowing to pay that back. Our other 12,000 we put in there, it's just been sitting there, but right now we're going to be using a portion of that, and I'm thinking the number is a little over 5,000 acre feet of that, 51 or 5,200, to help the underrun or the shortage that we did to Coachella last year. We only produced about 60. Tina, you're going to have to help me with the number. 6,100, 6,150 of the 12,000 that we owed. I won't say owed, that our commitment for the Coachella transfer. So our ICS account, as we've asked the Bureau to do, and that's in the process of being done, it shows in the accounting that way, they will tap our ICS account and it'll be reduced by that amount that we missed, and so we'll still have a little over 5,000 acre feet left up there. Every year it gets hit. There's a payment going in, and then there's a percentage of evaporation that's deducted from that on a yearly basis. So if you leave it there long enough and don't do anything, it'll eventually go to zero.
But does Met have the same rules on them?
Yes, the same rules are on them.
So the rules of the storage at Meade don't allow the IID to get any of the kind of beneficial use we're talking about in developing our own local storage.
You're right. What happens here, you put water in, you take a 5% hit to the system. And that pays for the first year basically 2% for the system and 3% for evaporation the first year. And every year after that, there's a 3% evaporation figure. So we had 11,004 left of that 12,000. And then it takes a hit on evaporation and then also the deduct for the underage that we had to Coachella. But we will definitely continue to work on that issue as time goes on. There's more storage behind Lake Mead, but it's not something that that is well thought of among the 7 basin states, not just Met, it's also Arizona and the Upper Basin also. And so it's a big challenge.
Mike, I think Bill Swan's the one back when MWD was allowed to store behind Mead, an IID director at that time. I don't know if that was in the 50s or 60s.
I was actually in 1930.
Okay, in the 30s went along with allowing Mead, MWD to have storage behind the dam.
One of the things they did the reason by doing that is that Met was after our water as early as back then, and was to get them off our back at that particular time. And I wasn't born then, so as most of you weren't born in 1932. But it was to appease them, get them off their back. At that particular time, you have a chance to store water behind Mead, and we don't have that. But they're still here on our back.
I want
changed.
to thank Mike for closing the loop and bringing Met into the discussion.
I think, John.
And then the other thing is when the dam is full, the stored water goes over the dam and they lose it, right?
That's correct. If you have ICS in there and you don't get it out, if we get into flood stage, that's the first water to go, you lose it. Right. So there's advantages. Right now it's great. We're 100 and some feet below it, topping over on what they call 70R release. In other words, it's 70% full.
I think it'd be fair to say that ICS water means something different for Met than it does for IID.
That is correct.
For Metropolitan, and I think it goes back to pre-Hoover. ICS is any water that it decides it needs to store or that it can afford to store.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I just like to make a comment. A lot of this is historical, goes back a number of years. But with the quantification of the entitlements now, it's a whole new ballgame.
That's correct.
And storage needs to be an integral part of it. If they're going to change the rules on your entitlement and so forth, then our ability to store has to change along with the new concepts and agreements that are coming forward.
And that is correct. And we've been bringing that point forward in the ICS rules and different things that we talked about. Well, you're going to be able to do more in the ICS, et cetera, but we're very limited in what we can do. And they keep talking about the ability to do more for us, but we haven't gotten there yet. But we keep bringing it up.
It's a very good point, Director Hanks.
I don't know if there's any comments from Mr. Cox on this letter that you guys sent in.
Not right now.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Not? Thank you, Vince, thanks. Are you done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to item number 14, page 72 on your agenda. Audited financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2010. Mr. Broking, or not Mr. Broking?
Good afternoon, President Mendoza, members of the board. My name is Ed Hall, Deputy Manager of Financial Services, and I'm going to be introducing Julie Desmone. She's a partner with our independent auditing firm of Moss Adams, and she'll be presenting to you the results of their audit of our financial statements as of December 31st, 2010.
Okay.
So I'll turn it over to Julie.
Thanks.
Good evening. You should have received in your board pack, or you did receive in your board pack, the audited financial statements. This is in draft form. It will come back on the 31st to get a final vote of approval from the board, and then we can move on to issuing the financial statements. So what I want to talk to you about today is a little bit about the audit, where we went, where we came from, where we went to, and just the results of that audit process. So the first thing, the most important thing out of our audit process, what we do as auditors is we come in, and if you look at those financial statements, it's around 70-some pages in those financial statements. If it's 79 pages, 69 of those pages are all management of IID's financial statements. What we do, we place an opinion on those financials. We come in and make sure that everything looks appropriate, looks reasonable, and is in line with generally accepted accounting principles. That opinion is on page 1 of the financial statements. I'm sorry, it's not on page 1. Yes, it is. It's on page 1 of the financial statements. And that's what we're trying to tell you, is that your financial statements are free of what we call material misstatement. And what the material misstatement means is that if an ordinary user of the financial statement would differ in their opinion of IID, that makes a decision material to the financial statements. And I know that's a little bit vague. But what we're pleased to say is that the financial statements put forth in draft form to you, we believe, materially represents the workings of IID for the year ended December 31st, 2010. So it's called an unqualified opinion. I know it's a little bit of strange language. It's auditor language. What that means to you, it's an absolute clean opinion. And this is when you go to your rating agencies, when you go look at counterparties and your different organizations that you work with, this is what you want to bring forth in front of them. So it is a clean opinion. Now, I just described what our responsibility is under generally accepted auditing standards. Again, your information is derived by all the employees within IID. As they're working on a daily basis, what we're doing at the end, or what management does at the end, is tries to accumulate all that information in a financial standpoint. And then we apply a certain set of principles or rules to it to make sure it's consistent through reporting periods and consistent to other entities out there. So our responsibility is to give you that opinion. Your responsibility, or management's responsibility, is to drive all the information in those financial statements. I'm pleased to report that we did issue the audit, or we will issue the audit within the planned scope and timing that we went to when we first started the audit. This is important because it really comes to how we were working through things during the context of the audit. Now, I do know that at one point we did wait a little bit longer than last year, just due to some decisions the board was making that Mr. Brokering will get into a little bit later on the ECA, which has been updated and reflected on a decision the board made in the financial statements. So we did perform it within the planned scope and timing. And it's also important to note when you're reading through the financial statements, and I'm sure I said this last year, but if I were to ever teach anybody how to read financial statements, I wouldn't start with numbers. I'd start with note 1. And what that is your significant accounting policies or your rules to your financial statements. Every different entity has different rules depending on what type. A credit union has very different rules than a utility. So understanding those rules is very important, and understanding any changes or significant changes to that rule structure is important. There were no new accounting policies or changes to existing policies, as is what we would expect this year. Now, in the financial statements, there are some numbers that aren't hard and fast, some things that management has to estimate, and then we come in and see whether or not we agree with the estimation procedures and methodologies that are used. These 5 are the major estimates that are included in your financial statements, which includes unbilled revenue, your allowance for doubtful accounts, or what you don't expect to collect on your accounts receivable, your recovery periods for the cost of plant, how long you expect your plant to stay in service. Other post-employment benefit obligations, that's getting to be a bigger number every year. That's really what you're going to pay your employees after they're done working. And then your claims. All those are numbers that won't end up being exactly what we booked in the financial statements or what management recorded in the financial statements. It's important to note that management uses very tried and true methodologies to estimate these numbers, and all of them are very much in line with industry standards and are very consistent with prior years, which is what we would expect. Now, there were a couple of entries. I think it's important to note there's 2 types of audit adjustments during the course of an audit. The first one is things we actually reflect in the financial statements, and then there's ones that we don't. So I want to talk first about our adjustments to the financials, and this is where we're coming in as auditors and actually changing the financial statements. There was one major adjustment for $5.9 million, and no, it's not a mistake. It's actually the same exact amount on both sides. And what happened in this is SAP did a little SAP magic, which is your internal financial recording system. Did a little bit of magic, and there was a rule in there on how the business processes are split out between water and power. In total, your accounts payable was fairly stated, but how it was split between water and power, because that rule created a negative balance in your water side. So we had to go back in there and take a look at what payables were supposed to be in what divisions and make some adjustments. So in total, everything was the same at the beginning of the audit to the end of the audit, but what was different was the split between your energy and your water department. That was the major adjustment that we made during the course of the audit. Now, there were other adjustments for external financial reporting purposes. You house your financial statements, the ones that you look at on a monthly basis, could be different in presentation than the ones we do, because we have to issue it in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. You're looking at management's looking at it more from a managerial accounting purpose. So we do move a few numbers around, but we don't move an asset from a liability or a revenue to an expense, but we do have things just moved around a little bit on the financial statements. Now, the next set of adjustments is called our past adjustments. During the course of the audit, when we get in, your financial statements are completely done. So they're in a place, your books are closed, and we will find things during the course of the audit, primarily because we have the benefit of time, where management's got to close the books very, very timely so they can get on to the 2011 reporting year. We come in quite a bit later in the game and get to look at history and what's happened. So we do find what we call adjustments to the financial statements. But if management does not believe that they will have a material impact on the financial statements, and we concur with that assessment, they go into the past adjustments listing. What's important to know is we accumulate these both individually and in aggregate to make sure that they're not going to influence the reader of the financial statement against a different decision that they would make on the financial statements. There were a couple of those, primarily the OPEB liability, and this really just gets into how they estimate. So at the end of the year, an actuarial study is done to determine what the expense should have been through the year. At the beginning of the year, management puts in a percentage to apply to all the payroll accounts, because the payroll accounts just go everywhere on the financial statements, from construction work in progress to almost every single line item on your income statement. So when we get to the end of the year, there's going to be a difference between what was actually recorded as an expense and what that actuarial report comes in at. And this year it was a bit different. They actually over expensed or over put into the financial statements. And so what they've done is they've adjusted the 2012 allocation. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with budget or with cash flow. This is one of these accounting entries that has no cash flow related behind it. So it's required because of standards, but at the end of the day, your financial statements are fairly presented. We found other adjustments on the water side. One was regarding the AAC lining project for $772,000. This was due to an invoice that was billed in January but was due to December billing, so it should have been in the financial statements in December. It did get into the financial statements in January, and since there will be no billings like this in the next year, everything is fairly stated. And then finally, the accrual for the environmental liability is very similar to last year. You have about 12 to 15, I think it's 15 trash sites where there's some cleanups that are being required by the county. And these sites are going to cost approximately $707,000 in an estimation terms. Now, where we're at right now is that as these sites are being cleaned up, they're being expensed to the financial statements. There is a standard called GASB 49 that requires that to be recorded up front. But again, the cash flow, you want to map it to the cash flow, so that's yet another past adjustment. In pretty simple terms, when I audit about 60 utilities across the nation, and these are very good for the size and complexity of your entity. It is a very good set of numbers. You have a great group of people that are really working hard. If you remember a couple years ago when we came in, we had quite a few of some pretty massive adjustments, and things have been whittled down to a very good degree. People have been working. It's very obvious from our independent standpoint that your accounting department has been working extremely, and everybody in the organization has been working extremely hard to get these numbers tried and true. We're pleased to report there were no disagreements with management. In fact, management is very easy to work with. We have conversations throughout the year to ensure that they're up to speed on all the accounting things that are going on, and we're up to speed with what's going on within IID to make sure that there's no significant adjustments towards the end of the year. We don't know of any consultations with other accountants. This really gets back to opinion shopping. We haven't seen any evidence of that. It's required that we tell you that if we see it. We have no difficulties encountered in performing the audit. Obviously, there's always an audit, as if you talk to any of anybody actually in the organization that's had to deal with us. An audit's not an easy thing. There is a tremendous amount of information that has to be ready for us. There is, your job description generally doesn't let you take 2 weeks out of the year and say, don't do your other jobs, just deal with the auditors. So we are an added burden on top of an already extremely busy schedule. And the one thing that's nice here at IID is that everybody is very willing to give us the time that we need to get through the audit in a timely fashion. And then independence. We take a look at our independence on a yearly basis. We look at any other projects that we've done throughout the year, and we found no situations or conditions that would impair our independence, either in appearance or in fact. Now, internal controls, we've had some findings in the past on internal controls. And we are required to report to you if we have any significant findings or material weaknesses or significant control deficiencies. Last year, we did have a significant control deficiency, which I believe was a material weakness in the prior year, regarding closing of construction and process to plant. They did a very, very good job at that this year. This was addressed prior to us getting out there. That was one of the first things that we tested when we came out, and we found that it was very clean and it was well done by the accounting department and by operations. So there were no material weaknesses. There's no significant control deficiencies. We did have some what we call other matters, and these are just matters that arise during the audit of best practices and process improvements that we saw during the course, and we have given a list of those to management just to let them know what we saw. That's all I have is my required my standard presentation. I will note that one of the reasons that I don't get into the numbers too much is because the other thing that we do is we take a look at what you're receiving on a monthly basis, and we take a look at the presentations that you've been given, and we compare those back to what our audit is. And if they were significantly different, or we feel the information was different from what I would present to you from a financial standpoint than what is being presented by your accounting department and finance department, we would definitely let you know, but it's very in line with exactly what we're seeing as well. So we didn't want to just reiterate additional information.
Thank you for your presentation. Comments or questions from the board?
How long does your audit take, and how many people do you have at the district doing the audit?
We have two times of the audit. Well, we've got kind of three times. First is planning. So our planning of the audit generally there's 3 of us out here probably for 2 to 3 days getting the audit staged and planned. And then we have what we call internal control testing. We brought 4 people out this year, not including myself. 4 people out this year to do the internal controls, and that's where they go around the organization. We primarily spend most of our time for this utility in the revenue and billing controls and accounts receivable and cash receipting. Work orders, payroll, and disbursements are the primary areas that we do look at all the other control cycles as well. And then when we come out for final field work, we're here for 2 full weeks. With a team of 4 people. And then when we're done with that process, we have probably another week to week and a half of what we call wrap-up time. That's when I'm really getting into it and reviewing all their work, and they're having to look at things.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? No?
Yeah.
Director Hanks?
I have a couple of comments, if I could get you to go to the notes on, starting on page 88. Note 1.
Oh, can you tell me, does it show the page number? And I don't have the book. Which page number? The
Page 14.
14, okay. Okay.
On the reporting entity, you mentioned the square miles of water and power. We received a letter this afternoon concerned about the relationship between this and the voting of the participants. You have to be living inside the water service area. So I would think that we may need to clarify this a little. Okay. And then on the accounting pronouncements, I mentioned the district has elected not to adopt the pronouncements issued by the FASB after November 30th, 1989. Would you explain that to me? What
Sure.
that means?
This country got divided back in 1989, well, actually about 1954, but there is the FASB, or the Financial Accounting Standards Board, which takes care of all of the profit entities and nonprofit entities, and then there's the GASB Reporting Board, which is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. FASB was issued, the Financial Accounting Standards Board started a lot earlier than GASB did. So when GASB was introduced by the federal government, they came in and didn't want to start all the way over. So at that time, what they allowed for is they allowed for entities to go ahead and use all FASB standards that were prior to 1989, but they made you elect from the organizational standpoint to either go ahead and follow FASB and GASB going forward, or just GASB. So the election of IID was to go ahead, you have to use everything prior to 1989, and your election was just stick with GASB after. Now, I will say on that, if there's a standard that overlaps between FASB and GASB, GASB is the ruler. One final point, the standards were codified, the GASB standards were codified this year, and within the next 12 months, you will be required only to follow GASB. So this whole thing will go out because there won't be an election available anymore.
Okay. Does the GAN limit apply to irrigation districts?
Yes. Say that one more time?
The GAN limit?
The GAN limit?
Yes.
I'm not entirely sure what you mean, I'm sorry. The GASB?
No, this, I'm familiar with it from the school system, and it has to do with your income in relationship to your expenditures.
Right.
And so you have a set amount that you're limited by each year, because you can't raise rates. So I was just curious whether...
No, enterprise funds, like a utility, it's the board's authority to set rate structures and to determine if the budgeted expenditures are appropriate and for solid business purposes, but there is no tying directly of those.
On the basis of accounting on the same page 14, and the first paragraph under basis of accounting says, separation is also required for evidence of compliance with the covenants of the district's outstanding indebtedness. And that was a separation issue between water and power. Do you actually audit to see if there's an encroachment one way or the other?
Yes, we do. What we do is, and you'll note that we audit both individually, the electric system and the water system, and combined. So when we talked about the concept of materiality, we actually set it down to the individual system level. So we do take a look, and that's actually what caught this AP entry. The $5.9 million is our procedures around looking how the different business processes, or because there's some joint processes within SAP, how they're separated. We look at between payroll to all sorts of the gamut. So yes, we do.
Did you find any reportable exceptions there?
No. Okay. Not except for what we described, which was a system issue.
I have other questions, but if anyone else wants to jump in at any time.
Go on.
Under page 15, protection of water rights, the district capitalizes the costs associated with the protection of water rights, and advertised for protection of water rights were $873,003 for the years ended. Was that for the combined years?
No, that was each year.
Each year, so
Yes.
that's an ongoing
Yes.
fixed amount.
Yes, it's on a straight line basis. So when the water rights were established, when the dollar amounts come in, it's over a 35-year period. It's required under GAAP standards to be under a straight line method. So we generally just, or not generally, we do just take that total amount that was capitalized, divide it by 35, and every year you're going to record an expense of that amount.
Okay. On the same page 15, under the utility plant, on some of our jointly owned utilities, I think that's with SCAPA, if I got it right. That's a pay and take.
Take and pay, right?
Take and pay, okay. Do you audit that real close to see how well we're managing those dollars? Or, you know, is there a variance that you report, or is that something that we just have to ask, or?
A variance as far as budget to actual, or a variance as far as we audit it.
An acceptable range is what I was looking at.
Oh, you know, that really gets more into managerial and operational accounting, which is not in the context of this audit. What we do look at is we look at the costs that are coming through from SCAPA to ensure that they're consistent with your contract with SCAPA, to make sure the allocation percentages are correct. And we don't look at that on every contract, but we do it by a sample basis. So that's primarily what we look at. To where getting into whether or not it's benchmarking, that's just not in the scope of this audit.
If I could, Mr. Coate, if we have an instance where we need to make some adjustments, then we have provisions in which to sell off unused energy. Maybe not from these utilities, but
there is a private use provision that we can, I think we're restricted to sales of no more than 5% from resources that are financed by tax-free debt, which would include all the SCAPA. So if we were long, we would have to, if we were long for an extended period, then our sales would have to go to other SCAPA entities or other municipal entities.
Okay. I'll probably follow up with that later. Okay?
Yes, sir.
On the on page 18, on the deferred revenue, the rate stabilization fund, those are some issues that we're continuing to work on. In your opinion, is the deferred revenue, is that in the basic rate fund? Is that the way you understand it?
In the basic rate fund.
Yeah. The rate stabilization fund, is that a component within the basic rate, or is that it was generated through the ECA?
Right.
So, but when it was established as deferred revenue, does that move it into a general fund type setting? Or is it
for use for anything is what you're saying? So under the standard, under what we used to call FAS 71, now it's Accounting Standard Codification 980, it's to the board's designation of where it goes. At this point, what you've done with this rate stabilization, and Greg, jump in if you make sure I'm answering or thinking this right, but what you've done as a board is you've restricted that amount of money. So it is a board designated asset, which means that only the board can release those funds to where the board wants those funds to be. And that is under ASC 980 FAS 71. That is a mandated, nobody can do that without board approval, or if you had a higher authority like a PUC or Public Utility Commission. So the board is the only one. Management cannot make a rate stabilization account. Management can't defer revenue under FAS 71. Only the board can do that action.
Okay.
And so it would be required to follow it the other way, what you designate. If you said it was okay to use from a general fund standpoint, you could. If you designate where the funds have to go to, they must follow those sources.
Okay. On page 21, on some of our investments, and the board was aware we had some money invested with Lehman Brothers Holdings. I would assume that's a custodial credit risk, that investment, with the situation they're in. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that those funds have been in these financial statements written down to almost nothing.
Okay, and looking, and I don't know whether this is within the scope of your audit or not. Okay, but like on this page, there was one other credit rating that was A or below, but I didn't see any more. Do you advise on any that you deem credit risk, or is that something that we need to keep an eye on?
It's definitely something you want to keep an eye out for. It's not something that I'll report on it and tell you where it's sitting at and what the risk for it is, but I don't have a finance degree, so I don't get into where you should be from a portfolio risk standpoint.
Okay, let me ask you this, and you may not want to answer it.
No, that's good.
At the bottom of page 21, there's a list of 4 companies that we've invested with that represents more than 5% of the district investment.
Right.
Do you see any risks in any of those?
To be honest with you, I can't say no, only because with the last, I think 10 years ago, I would have definitely said, oh, no problem at all. But based on the last 10 years, it would be hard to say no. Now, I will know that I do know a lot of our clients have had a really hard time investing their money because there's not a lot of places willing to take the kind of sums of money that you've got sitting in your investment accounts. And the federal government is very willing to take it. So that is a determination that has to be made. But I think that there's always risk. Do I know can I quantify that risk for you? No.
Is there less risk to invest in the state investment pool?
That is a really good question. What do you want to? I mean, that's a really good question.
It probably parallels the payback too.
Yeah.
Probably.
Well, we're at our maximum at Life, so we've got. I believe there's $50 million in there now, and that's the maximum amount we can put in with them.
Okay. All right. I think that was just about. Let me check.
Oh, you're good.
You were giving us advice on reading through the audit. I've always thought the notes were the most helpful for me.
Absolutely.
And I encourage the rest of the board, if you try to read through all of it, it is very.
It's not exciting.
If you concentrate on the notes, I think it's more helpful.
The notes provide context to the numbers. And again, all the numbers are is a representation of what happened to IID over the past fiscal year.
I think you may have made reference to note 11 on page 44, unpaid claims liability.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know of any that's not reported on the balance sheet?
Now, what's required to be recorded on the balance sheet, it's called a FAS 5 contingency. Sorry, I'm using accounting jargon. But there's a probability ratio that goes into all of our disclosures, all of your disclosures, I'm sorry. So when they're looking at the claims payable, if there is a claim out there, but the probability is very remote, or the outcome is unknown, and there's no way to reasonably estimate that number, then those can be not included on your financial statements. Now, if the probability is, or if the outcome is not known and the probability is high likely of a negative impact to the institution, or to IID, then you would require just no disclosure. And we've done that with what we believe. So either everything that's got a probability ratio, not even a high, over 50% probability ratio that you will have to pay out, and is disclosed or included in the financial statements as a dollar amount. And for those things that have a higher probability ratio, but the number is not estimable, those are disclosed in the financial statements if they reach a certain materiality threshold.
If in the interdepartmental transactions, what is your role as far as bringing attention? If you see any discrepancies there?
Yes.
You will bring that.
Oh, absolutely. And it primarily because they've got two separate rate structures that are supporting their own entities, their water and the power. So yes, absolutely. Now, I will tell the commissioners is that there are a lot of what we call joint costs that have an allocation model, and we spend a lot of time on that allocation model to see whether or not it seems that things are being split between the two systems ratably, and we believe that they are.
Okay.
And they're changed on a yearly basis based on your budgeted numbers.
That's always a touchy issue with our ratepayers, whether one department is subsidizing another. That's why I'm asking.
Absolutely.
But it is monitored, it is audited.
Yes.
Okay. And then I think my last question on page 45, under the health benefits, under the commercial coverage, and I'm not sure what year, but I think that $2 million per person lifetime maximum has been increased.
Oh. Okay, we'll check that out.
That's correct. I think that was the case, but I'm not sure what year that was changed in, but I think
okay.
it was full closing since June 2008.
We will definitely check that out.
And then the only, just for my curiosity's sake, sometimes I hate to ask questions because it tends to show how much a person doesn't know. But on page 46, and Mr. Colt, you may have to help us here. On the ratio of fuel to non-fuel of San Juan and Palo Verde, there's that much difference in the nuclear power? The ratio between fuel and non-fuel?
I don't know the answer to that offhand. What I think there's a definition problem here in that SCAPA does not charge fuel cost as fuel cost per se.
Okay.
SCAPA rolls a minimum must-take component plus debt service plus O&M into the non-fuel component of the bill. Then there is a discretionary energy component from both. That would go into the fuel. So I believe what you're seeing here, but I'm going to have to check. The non-fuel includes fuel at a minimum capacity factor, O&M, and debt service.
With debt service being the largest component.
Debt service,
by far.
Debt service on San Juan is about $3.6 million per month. Just the debt service component, where monthly minimum pay component is about $3.6 million. On Palo Verde, it is, I think, about $445,000. But again, let me come back with the exact numbers for you.
On the actual on the OPEB, are you comfortable where we're at there?
Yes. Where are you at with the, so what page is that? Sorry. Oh, there it is.
I overlooked it somewhere. I had it marked.
It's 49. It starts at 49. So yes. Does it represent your entire unfunded liability? No. But should it? No. Just to get out there. When GASB 45 came into existence, if you were to have to record the entire unfunded obligation, you would have had to fund about $45 million, not fund from a balance sheet standpoint, about $45 million in 1 year. So, or actually, it would have been, where'd it go? about $23 million in 1 year. And so what they allowed you to do is to accumulate that $23 million over a 30-year basis. So every year that you're expensing, you're taking the change of what the OPEB obligation was last year to this year, and then you're also taking a piece, like 1/30th of that piece. So you are in line with the standard, absolutely. You're getting your actuarial studies by a very good firm on the by-year basis, which is required under the standard, and you're exactly where, and all your disclosures are in compliance with GASB 45.
That's good to hear, because in 2006-7, that was a
Scary.
Yeah, we had big problems.
Big numbers.
So that's good to hear.
And I will say, on another note, one thing that you've done that's not many utilities have done is you've set aside cash, though it's not in a trust or anything outside the organization. You, as a board, have designated those funds to pay for the OPEB. So you've already got your cash reserves to pay for this liability, which I would say the majority of the utilities, probably 91% of the ones that I audit, have not. It's absolutely 100% unfunded.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you.
I have a question on the agenda. It's page 126. It would be note 16, trust lands.
Yes.
And they're right toward the bottom of the page. You say in June 2008, there was one sale of Western farmlands to the amount of $5 million.
Oh.
There had been no escrow closing since June of 2008.
Yeah, that's not, we can delete that.
Is that correct?
I don't think so.
I believe so.
Pardon me?
I believe so.
Under subsequent events, it says here that there was a sale on March 1st, 2011 for $6.07 million.
Right.
I think there's been more sales than that, though, hasn't there?
No, that is correct. The last one until this one in March was June 2008.
Wow.
Right.
So that was the last escrow that we closed?
Until June.
We've had.
And then, yeah, there was one in 2011 that was included in your subsequent event note.
Okay, all right. What page is it? Oh, here it is.
Yeah, sorry. That would be at the end.
Okay.
54. You got $6.07 million.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah, when Director Desert pointed it out to me, I said, that doesn't make sense. Okay, are there questions or comments? If not, thank you. And this will come back on the 31st for approval.
True. So if you do have any questions for us, you can, Mr. Brokering can get to us if you've got other comments or questions on the financial statements. Thank you.
Okay.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break and then come back?
Go ahead.
Mr. Brokering,
Yes.
we're going to move item number 18 to this now, and then we'll come back to item number 16, if that's okay with you. If it's not okay with you, we're going to do it anyway. So,
Do I have number 18?
no, you can't.
Oh, okay.
That's fine. So, number 18, page, item number 18, page 155 on your agenda. This is, I asked for this matter of formally hiring Kevin Calley as the IID General Manager to be placed on today's agenda. As you all are aware, the district is dealing with critical water and energy issues, and now is not the time to introduce someone new into the mix. The learning curve is too steep. Besides that, the person we have now doing the job has proven to be effective, and I see no reason to change. I think we should give him our full support by making him general manager for a 2-year period. He knows the issues and has shown that he can be trusted to do the right thing in carrying out board policy. It is clear to me that Mr. Calley has executive-level talent, and his interim status is holding him and the district back from advancing a strategic agenda. Let's give him the authority he requires by demonstrating our confidence in him and his ability to perform. If at the end of the 2 years we find that he doesn't meet our needs, we can initiate our recruitment effort then. I believe the board should enter into a contract with the interim general manager that makes him general manager for 2 years, provides for a midterm review, and preserves his employee status for the length of the agreement. I would ask the board to direct General Counsel to prepare an employment contract for Mr. Cali for the position of General Manager.
I'll make the motion as the statement was read by Board President Mendoza.
Is there a second to your motion?
Yeah, I'll second the motion.
Can I ask some questions?
Discussion?
Yeah. Are you going to ask the?
Well, if I'm directed to prepare a contract, I'm going to need to know a few more things than the items that Director Mendoza raised, and that's sort of why I put the list down here on this agenda item. We have a fairly standard general manager's contract, and we have a fairly standard manager's contract. They're a little bit different. I understand some of these issues, but there's some other issues that if the board is...
Let's go through 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are the ones that you want to ask about. Let's go with that.
Term, and I understand that you haven't taken action, but I just want to make sure I understand the contemplated action. Term would be 2 years. A midterm review is fine. Can you, when you say preserve employment status, can you be a little more... I'm not exactly sure.
What I mean by that is that in the 2-year period, if this board decides that they would like to hire someone new, Mr. Cali would revert to his position before he was interim general manager, whatever that title was at that time.
His title now is, his title before interim was assistant to the general manager, correct?
Well, his title wasn't in governmental liaison, or what was your title, Kevin, before?
What was it?
It was assistant?
I think on the books it was the assistant to the general manager. Okay. I continued to be the community information officer prior to that.
And the same salary? Or is that something that you want to leave open?
The same salary for what?
That he had previously?
Yes.
Normally,
the assistant to the GM you're talking about?
Yes.
Yes.
Normally, when we have a contract for a manager or the general manager, there would be 2 types of potential termination. One would be termination for cause, and with the general manager, that's a pretty high bar. The other would be termination for convenience, and typically what that involves is the opportunity to terminate without cause and pay a severance. Are you suggesting that this ability to return to the old job would be a substitute for a severance under a termination?
Yes.
So you want a termination for convenience, but instead of the severance, you would have language that says you would go back to the old position.
Correct.
And then you would preserve the potential for terminating for cause at that very high bar that the general manager has. Okay.
Correct.
Benefits, I presume, are the same benefits that typical IID managers and general managers receive. Performance review mid-year, you mean annual?
Yes.
No bonus, change in salary. What is the salary going to be?
What he is receiving now is the interim general manager.
Okay.
What is that? Mr. DeVoy?
241.
Okay, that would be the salary.
Okay, do you want to have an opportunity for increase or change in that salary over the 2 years?
No. I would like it to be a 2-year contract with a midterm review. At the end of the 2 years, the board can either decide to go out and recruit for a new GM, or at that time we can negotiate a new contract for Mr. Cali.
Okay, that's the information I think I would need.
That's my opinion. You could poll the rest of the board members.
Well, I'm just based on your motion.
Director Hanks?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. We've asked this gentleman to step in and fill in at a very critical time in the life and times of the IID. And I think this would get us through that time. It also gives him the opportunity to see whether he wants to continue to deal with us or we want to deal with him.
Exactly.
If we, and at that end of that time, then I would say that he should become an at-will employee at the end of that 2 years if we extend the contract.
As all of us are aware, Mr. Kelly has been doing the job as 90% of the general manager's job anyway for the past few years. And so I have full confidence in Mr. Kelly that he can do the job. He was doing that 3 years ago, and he's doing it now since the first part of the year. And with the help of the management staff, with the help of Mr. Campbell, I think that Mr. Kelly will lead the IID into the path that is beneficial to our ratepayers. And I would ask the board to support me in that motion, and in giving Mr. Kelly the general manager status. Comments from the public?
Madam President,
Yes.
Board, thank you so much. Martin McBroom, Pearl County Farm Bureau President, Cal Patria farmer. Having known Kevin a long time, and I hope this doesn't hurt his chances by making these comments, that we're encouraged to see you take somebody at this opportunity to be a general manager at this high level of local roots, longtime family. And I think with what you've just said, I'm not going to reiterate it, that he would serve this valley well. He's not going to go anywhere. We'll hunt him down. We'll find him. He works well with us in the farming community. He's given us lots of opportunity to discuss things back and forth. We don't agree a lot on a lot of things, but that's okay because his door is always open. He always listens. He's been very thoughtful. And I think we have a new sense of feeling about how things are going to work. And it's a nice feeling to have in the farming community. So we're encouraged by this, and we're hopeful. Thank you.
And adding to your comments, Mr. Kelly is here all the time.
All the time.
And he even works on Saturdays, when most people don't.
He answers his phone whenever we need him. And
Exactly.
he's been to most meetings we could never get the other managers to. And it's very well appreciated that he does that. He comes and participates in our Farm Bureau board meetings. However, I haven't seen him eat the lunch yet. I've been waiting.
He doesn't eat with us either.
I don't see him eat much, period, for that matter. But he's been very well appreciated here at the board level, and we're very encouraged by your action here tonight.
Well, I appreciate your comments. I really do, because when this board asked Kevin to take on the responsibility as the interim GM, that comes with a lot of liabilities as well. And he stood up to the plate. And what I would like to see is for a definite time, a 2-year period, because at this point we have so many issues that we're dealing with, and I think that we need this breathing space. We need this time to move forward with those projects, like the water storage project, QSA. It's going to come forward. It's not going to come forward. Transmission expansion. We need someone that knows the issue, someone that cares, someone that is here, and it's important for Mr. Kelly to be that person. And thank you for your comments.
Well, whenever his career is over at the IID, he won't be leaving, because he does live here, and so does his family and his kids, and those are good things to have. So we appreciate that.
Thank you. Comments from the...
Walking a little stiff there still after sitting there for 2 hours almost. I agree with what this gentleman said, and you know what? I should have picked up my wife about an hour ago. I'm going to get it.
She's going to divorce you, Tony.
Oh, I know. Second one, I guess.
It went from 80% to 50%.
50%, yeah. But you know what? I'd rather do that and get it then so he can get the job here. I've known Kevin for many years, and one of the things that I see in the board members, that you people never forget where you came from. Even though I'm in discord with some of you at some time, but it's always been respectful, It's always been respectful, even with you, Mr. Desert, Always, hi, Tony, how you doing? Mr. Hanks, too. All of you, and I supported Stella, I supported Mr. Membo, I haven't supported Mr. Sanchez, but we communicate. And that's the thing with this gentleman, is that he communicates. You never forget where you came from, because you know what? You were there at one time. And I brought issues, hard issues, like In God We Trust. And Kevin has always taken middle of the road kind of stand because that's the way he should be, but always respected me, always giving me information. The most I waited maybe at a phone call, to get a phone call back was maybe one day, and that was it. But most of the time within hours, and people that get elected know that us that vote for you want to get back information. That's why we call you. And I feel that Kevin will do what you just said, Stella, what this gentleman said, is take the IID in the right direction. And as a benefit, too, he should get compensated for what he gets right now. And also, he have something to lay back on in case something happens, you know. So to me, Kevin, you got my full support, and I hope the board votes 5-0 instead of my trying to think ahead of time that was 3-2. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ramos. Comments from the board? Director Sanchez?
Yep. First, I'd like to begin with on how tough some of these directors are. I want to give my vote for Mr. Kelly and give him the opportunity for a unanimous vote that I believe he deserves for showing a willing personality to bring consensus among the board. Mr. Kelly, the vote will come to pass, just like names and faces, bad ideas, good ideas. We all come and go. But what would stay for a length of time is character. Mr. Kelly, there are a lot of people who have admiration for you, and I know you will do your best to keep your principles and your character intact and do your duty, since it is a duty, since we are owned by the ratepayers. But here's where my conviction lies. It lies with two issues that swing me back and forth because they are important to our voters. The first issue is the issue of out-of-towners. I must say it is definitely time for a local boy. I believe our voters are yearning for a local boy to have an opportunity, and one way or another, I believe they will have it today. My dividing issue is the second issue. The second issue is the perception of a secret society or something similar to. I say this because there is no argument that this institution is perceived to have a reputation that we hire family and friends and give them lucrative salaries and benefits, and most of all, take care of those who take care of us. I personally do not believe that here at the district, but it doesn't mean I will not vote for checks and balances and make it harder for any individual who uses the IID as his or her own piggy bank. When I was first elected and twice elected to this board, my over 40,000 flyers that I passed around the valley during both races included my distaste for nepotism and favoritism. Can we ever rid this type of behavior? I don't know. What I do know is that I will do my best to put policies into place that will make it harder for these practices to develop, and it begins at the top. Is having Mr. Kelly not being an at-will CEO take the district into a step backwards? And the always continuing fight to have at the IID as an equal opportunity employer? Yes, I believe it does. When I was elected, I had never thought that I would give any CEO, not an interim CEO, a multiple-year contract without him or her being at will. I have never voted for a CEO to not be an at-will CEO, and I can't begin now. During the last 4.5 years, there's been no one closer to me in the district than Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly is where I received a lot of information since he was our manager of communication and assistant general manager. But will the practice of protecting a CEO trickle down the institution? I don't know, but it is my concern. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I have questions. On the, Mr. Kelly, you said that at the end of the 2 years that if you're not going to continue on or the board doesn't continue on with you being the general manager, what position did I hear you say that you would go back to?
I think that the most appropriate contingency plan would be for me to go back to the role of community information officer. If I did this job for a couple of years and then reverted back to another position at the district, I don't think it would be appropriate to be an assistant to a new GM.
Okay, so you've made that decision in your own mind that you'll go back to your old previous position before you became assistant to the GM.
I think that'd probably be the most appropriate, yes.
Yeah, because you and I have had that discussion. Okay, well, thank you on that. Okay. So what we're looking at is a 2-year term, and what did you say, there was midterm reviews on this?
Yeah. 1 year after a 1 year review. Midterm, yes. It's a 2-year contract with a midterm review.
Okay, and then the compensation is $241, and it remains at that with no CPI or bonuses?
Well, it's up to this board what you all want to decide to do that.
That's the question I'm asking. But right now,
I would like to do that, but Mr. Kelly, could help me, please?
I think that also would probably be the most appropriate. These are unique circumstances. I acknowledge that, and so I would say that you ought to preserve the status quo.
What do you mean? Great communicator. Talk to me. What do you mean?
Well, that means he wants a Brady bonus of 10%.
It clearly doesn't mean that.
And you'll buy the coffee.
Excuse me. He's talking. Hold on.
It means that what you proposed originally sounds like the best way to go.
2-year contract, $241 a year, midterm review, no bonuses.
That's correct.
At the end of the 2 years, we can negotiate another contract or send you back to being the community officer, whatever.
Okay, that's fine. Then on number 3, the benefits are just the same as all benefits.
Yes.
The same benefits as similarly situated employees. We basically have the same benefits for managers.
And then on the number 4, the termination, cause, convenience, severance, that's basically you go back to your old position before you were assistant to the GM at your salary, which is $135,000.
I think that I'd have to consult. It's been so long, I can't remember.
We can determine what that salary was.
Oh, I think it was just short of 135 is what it was.
I have no quarrel at all with serving in that capacity as community information officer.
Okay. Okay, and then I just want to make a few comments. I know that when we had an agreement with Mr. Brady to leave and the board agreed for him to leave on a 5-0 vote, we talked about going out and finding another general manager and doing recruitment. I know that Mr. DeVoy came to us with a list of people, but that kind of got backburnered, and that's fine. And then I know, as Mr. Sanchez said, that we have contract employees here, and there are 8 people here at the district that work at will on contract for the board. And this is going to be different with Mr. Kelly. And what I want to say is that I know when Mr. Hoskins came in, I think he came in with a 4-1 vote. When Mr. Brady came in, he came in with a 5-0 vote. And me as a board member, I have no problem with Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly and I have had a very good relationship for the last 6 years, and I too, like Mr. Sanchez, have spent a lot of time visiting and talking to Mr. Kelly, both political and procedure-wise for things that are beneficial to the Imperial Irrigation District. And I think that Mr. Kelly and I have had the same goal of trying to move the district forward in a positive manner for the benefit of the ratepayers. And I will continue to work with Mr. Kelly in that capacity. And I also believe in Mr. Kelly that he has the intelligence and the understanding for the issues that we are faced with, dealing with QSA and trying to push that thing forward, and dealing with the transmission that has to be built that Mr. Koch's working with, and even dealing with other IID issues that Mr. Kelly has to work with his staff. I think it's very important that the outside world sees that this board does support their general manager. And when Mr. Kelly's in meetings, say in Sacramento as last week, when he has to deal with Lori Gray Lee and Jeff Keitlinger from MWD, they need to know that their board is supporting the general manager. I think that's very important for the IID. And I've had my issues with how this process has been handled. I've made those statements in the paper. But I do support Mr. Kelly, and I will be voting for Mr. Kelly because I think it's very important for the benefit and survival of the IID that we get behind our GM. And so I will be voting for Mr. Kelly. Thank you.
Well, Director Hanks?
Yeah, I just would like to make a couple of comments. First time I met Kevin Kelly was whenever I was running for office for the first term. Prior to that, I don't think I'd ever talked to him. I knew of his dad and his uncle, and I'd never met them. But coming on the board, sitting on any board, and if you've been on any board, you understand what I'm saying, there is a learning curve. And there are tons of times whenever you need information, you need mentoring, you need discussions, you have opinions based on what you know. And through the first 4 years, I spent a lot of time talking with Mr. Kelly because he was accessible. And we didn't always agree, and sometimes we even had a couple of harsh words. I think he even walked out of the room on me one time. But I also know that, like the rest of us up here, even though we had difference of opinion, and we may have difference of opinion of how the process moves forward and so forth, we are all committed to the Imperial Valley and to the Imperial Irrigation District. And there will be times I'll disagree with him. And sometimes instead of a bonus consideration, we probably ought to give him battle pay, especially for putting up with me. But I do think that the time is right, particularly with the issues that we're facing, with the knowledge he has and the historical background, and his ability to work with the board. And we won't always be 5-0. There'll be 3-2, 2-3s, 4-1s. But he will hear you out and give you that opportunity to present your side. The things that I have heard in the community since he came in as interim have been nothing but positive. And I expect it to continue that way, and I don't expect this to end up being a 2-year contract. I'd hope to see us get some of our issues that are out there that are faced by not just this board and not just the staff. Everybody that lives in the Imperial Irrigation District is being faced with it. And don't think for a second that we're not under attack, because we are. We have a balancing control area that is very valuable to this area and to the ratepayers. I talked with a car salesman yesterday that lived in La Quinta, working here in El Centro, and his neighbor across the street is in Cal Edison District. He knows the value, and it's very valuable to us as residents, commercial, industry. If we had to pay the rates elsewhere, and we think we have tough economic times now, it would even be more so. And we also know the value of our water rights. And when it comes to water rights, I already know that Mr. Kelly will put up a battle. He's already shown that to us. And that's what it's going to take. We are small in number. Thank God we have the priority on our water rights, but don't ever take it for granted, because it just takes a legislative change to change things around. And I feel strongly that we've made good headway in the past 4 years, and I expect to continue making good headway until we get things squared around so that our water rights are secure, our balancing control area is secure. We have development coming in. We continue with the training of our staff And we also have the opportunity on our power side to facilitate economic development that is compatible with the development that we already have here. And I just think the timing is right, and I expect to give him support, but don't think for a second that we're necessarily doing him a favor. This is a tough one. This is a tough job, and it is a critical job, and it is not for the weak at heart. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Director Desert?
Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Garber and Mr. Kelly. In recent IID history, has there been an IID GM that had a contract with the IID where if the contract was terminated that they reverted back to a past employee status?
Go ahead. I don't know.
My understanding is that Mr. Silva had a contract like that.
I just wanted to share that with the audience and with the rest of the board in case that can help influence their decisions.
I haven't independently verified that with Mr. Silva, but I'm told that
I did talk to Mr. Silva, because I talked to a lot of people, because I think this is a very, very important issue that the district is faced with. And Mr. Silva told me that he took the job. They got rid of Mr. Clinton in '99. And he was let go. We had a board change then after '98. And so Mr. Clinton didn't survive after that. And then Mr. Silva came in and held a job for 6 years. And he left in, I think it was in May of 2005, correct, Gloria? July. And he voluntarily left. And, but he could have gone back to his old job. Mr. Silva had risen through the ranks at the IID. I think he'd been here almost 40 years. And he started out on the survey crew in the water department and worked his way up through the ranks. And that the other thing that he told me, that he would not take the job unless he had a 5-0 vote. And that's the way he said he wanted all the directors to be backing him up. And that's kind of in those days. And then when Mr. Silva left, we brought in Mr. Hoskins, and like I said, he was 4-1. And after him, we brought in Brady, and it was 5-0, and that's kind of the way it went.
Okay, well then
you're going back to the old scheme of things and the way things were done in the past.
Sometimes maybe the things in the past aren't always that bad of a memory. Mr. Kelly's been in the community his whole life and been an asset everywhere he's been in the community. And I just wanted to point that out to the board, that there has been a past general manager at the IID that had the opportunity to revert to his past position if he was terminated or decided to leave the general manager's position. Additionally, a question to the board and to Mr. DeVoy and Mr. Garber. Will this make our general manager the highest paid IID employee? We had a situation recently when Dr. Brady was the general manager that came out where the energy manager, Etta Jane, was being paid more than him, and that didn't sit well in the community.
Mr. DeVoy, would you please come up to the mic and answer the question?
Dan DeVoy, Manager, Human Resources and Loss Control. No, this will not make this action the way it's proposed or been the motion that's on the floor would not make Kevin the highest paid district employee.
I did bring a copy of the policy that the board adopted on July 13, 2010. And I suspect that's the policy you're referring to, Director Desert. That policy requires that...
No, I'm not referring to the policy. That's not the 90% Apex policy.
Oh, that's what I thought you were referring to.
No,
I'm sorry,
not
that was the
Director
wrong
Hanks
date.
put together, no.
Here it is.
I just wanted to point that out, that this could come back, all these decisions we make here, people talk, people discuss, it gets in the paper. It needs to make sense that the head guy at the IID, the general manager, is the top paid man. Could we possibly recommend that he be paid the same as that top paid individual and reinstitute the opportunity for the bonus? Then we could review him at the end of the year and in fact raise him above if he meets our expectations, which I quite believe and am sure he will.
Yes, the board could do that. You could comply with this policy 1546, which is the limit on employee compensation. You could comply with that. It also, and Jeff, you can jump in here if you'd like, but it gives you the ability to make exceptions to the policy.
Right, that's what I was going to point out. And the date I stated was wrong. It's September 14, 2010.
Hold on. Director Hanks?
I think, and I would want concurrence with this from Mr. Kelly, that due to the circumstance where this is not an at-will, that the 241 be the established rate.
And Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to go.
No, and I appreciate Director Desert's comments and willingness to make it more attractive for Mr. Kelly, but the fact that Mr. Kelly will accept a 2-year contract, the fact that he is not seeking for a bonus at the midterm review, to me speaks a lot about his character. It's not just about the money. The fact that he did not volunteer to be the interim GM. We asked him, and he stepped up to the plate because, frankly, he was doing the work anyway, but he wasn't getting the title or the pay. So, to me, the initial terms that we talked about, the 241 for 2 years, each year for 2 years, midterm review, no bonuses, and then at the end of the 2 years, we can decide whether to extend the contract, and then it would be a different contract. But I am just so grateful that Mr. Kelly is willing to take this organization and lead us where we need to go. And like I said, it just speaks on his character. So with that, please vote. Is that abstain or did you vote?
Can I seek one other point of clarification now that you voted? I'm going to go ahead and prepare a contract consistent with your direction. It doesn't have to be brought back to you unless there's a problem, and I don't anticipate that, and it would be for the signature of the president. Mm-hmm. It might take me a day or two, and I know I'm going to be out of town later this week. Is this appointment effective first thing tomorrow morning?
It's effective today.
Okay, so
right now.
The contract will have an effective date of today.
Mr. DeVoy, remove that interim GM thing from his name. Right now. Throw it in the trash.
Yes, ma'am.
Over here.
Yes, Madam President.
I wonder if I might, if you just indulge me for a second. I don't have any prepared remarks. I thought, and if you'd move out of my way, that'd be helpful.
Go throw it in the trash.
I want to thank the board, all the board members, whether you voted for or on principle abstained. I have no aversion to an at-will contract. In fact, when that came up, I've always been mindful that I made such a big production out of not being a candidate for the job when I took this on, that, in the back of my mind, I knew that if something like this were to occur, that I'd have to explain that. And so all I would say is that I didn't just step up and fill a void that was presented. I want to do this job. I believe I can do it, and it's no happy prospect for me that I should fail or fall short of the mark and have to go back to something less. But I appreciate the board's indulgence and its confidence, and I'll do my best to serve the board and the district and the public. And thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Kevin. You're the one to be thanked. Okay. Thank you all. Moving on to, there you go. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 15, page 129 in your agenda, Energy Department refunding revenue bonds. Mr. Broking?
Yes. I have a short presentation, and after I make my presentation, Don Hunt from Fulbright and Jaworski also has his statement that he'd like to read into the record. This is for information this evening. And 2 weeks from today, we'll be asking the board to approve the authorizing resolution, the preliminary official statement, and approval of an official statement, a continuing disclosure certificate, an escrow agreement, and the bond purchase contract. This is the second of a series of 3 financings that we're planning on doing for the El Centro Unit 3 repiring. Here again, we plan on refunding $75 million of outstanding commercial paper by issuing revenue bonds. The par value is not to exceed $85 million, with the borrowing rate not to exceed 6.5%. We expect to be below both of those numbers. They will be revenue bonds as opposed to certificates of participation. Revenue bonds are certainly more receptive to investors. They like those as opposed to the COPs. And we plan on pricing those bonds on June 8th in New York. And our plan also is to take a board member with us for this trip also. We took one last time and it was very successful, and I would recommend that we do that again. So the timeline is such, informational presentation today. We have rating agency meetings and presentations on the 18th and 19th. Come back in 2 weeks for the board approval of the refunding. We would issue or release the preliminary official statement the next day. We would price the bonds, hopefully on the 8th. It may carry over to the 9th. And then we would have a closing on the 16th of June. And that's the extent of my presentation. If there are any questions.
And this is for information only,
Yeah,
correct?
information only, yes, ma'am.
Any questions or comments from the board? None? Thank you.
Can I just make a statement for the record that the draft OS has been that's addressed here in this informational item is on the IID website and has been made available to the public for review.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brogy, you might as well come back.
Actually, I would like Don Hunt, he has a statement he'd like to read into the record.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board. Excuse me. Don Hunt with Fulbright and Jaworski, the district's bond counsel. This is a statement that I would like to read and we'll read again on the 31st when the documents are before you for actual approval. The documents presented to you for review tonight authorize the issuance of not to exceed $85 million of electric system refunding revenue bonds and the execution and delivery of resolution, escrow agreement, a bond purchase contract, a preliminary official statement, and a continuing disclosure agreement, all in substantially the forms presented at this meeting. With whatever additions, changes thereto, as the officer executing the documents may require or approve, depending on the final terms and conditions of the bonds, interest rates, and those things. The board's approval of the bond purchase contract will require that the true interest cost on the bonds shall not exceed 6.5% per annum, and the underwriter's discount for the purchase of the bonds shall not exceed 0.7%. The approval by the board of the preliminary official statement on the 31st relating to the bonds will authorize the general manager or the chief financial officer of the district to certify to the underwriter on behalf of the district that the preliminary official statement is deemed final as of its date within the meaning of Rule 15C212 promulgated by the Securities and Exchange Commission Act of 1934, except for the omission of certain pricing, rating, and related information as permitted by said rule. The board approval of the financing documents at your next meeting and substantially the forms presented is the same process followed by virtually all public agencies in California, because rating information, actual interest rates, principal amounts by maturity, redemption provisions, and related matters are often not known until the date after the board approval or the date of sale of the bonds. It is valid and legal for the board to approve the parameters of the bonds and the authorizing documents, and to delegate the approval of the final terms and details to district staff. This also allows for correcting typographical errors, non-material edits, and correction of and update of information relating to the district and the electric system as necessary, contained in the preliminary official statement. Once the bonds are sold, issued, and delivered to the underwriters, our office will provide the final execution version of all the documents approved by the board, marked to show all changes made to those documents following the approval by the board. So there may be some minor edits when the documents come back to you prior to your meeting on the 31st. If you adopt those documents and proceed with the bond issue, once the bond issue is completed, we will provide marked copies of all the documents, so you will be able to see every change that has been made to those documents from what you reviewed originally.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
I have a
Yes.
Is there any language in the bonding that talks about the IID living up to some kind of income or rate increase that we may be held accountable for in the future?
Well, there are rate maintenance requirements in connection with the bonds, and the district does obligate itself, because this is a contract with the bondholders, that you will maintain the coverage requirement on the bonds.
Yeah, we'll maintain the coverage, but in the past, I think there's some discussion about specific rate increases being tied to bond language, and that the IID didn't live up to that, and then our bonding valuation or rating went down. That kind of language is not existing in these issues?
No. I mean, you would have to adopt rate increases if necessary to maintain the coverage requirements, but there's no specific schedule of rate increases discussed in the offering document.
And Greg, that coverage requirement, are we going to be able to meet that without a rate increase? Is that anticipated?
Well, we're currently going to be able to meet the coverage requirement, but in the future, I can't guarantee that there won't be any rate increases.
Right.
But right now, we're covered.
In the immediate future, yeah.
Any other comments? Director Hanks?
Just one request. Mr. Garber, would you be sure and share with our bond counsel any letters? We've received some today to make sure that we have full disclosure.
Yeah, in fact, that letter went to bond counsel. We've already discussed it, and I've recommended a minor change consistent with some of what's said in that letter.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Greg, last time we went to New York, I think we got 75 or 85 million, and then now we're going to get some more money. Are you going to need more money to finish up Unit 3, or how's this thing going to work?
Yes, we're planning on another financing after this one closes. The project is budgeted at $248 million. We've already paid some of those project costs out of the 2008 proceeds, but we need roughly another $225 million to pay for the cost of that project. And so we've borrowed $75 million or $78 million, and we're going to do that hopefully 2 more times.
So you've got the 78 that we already got, plus what we're going to get here on June the 8th,
and then I would plan on doing it shortly thereafter, within the next month or so, to do the final borrowing for that project. A couple of reasons. One, interest rates have actually improved since we did the first financing and refunding in February. They're still not as low as they would have been back in last summer. And then just the thought of building a long-term project without having financing. It's not something I want to continue much longer.
So in the end, you'll end up borrowing the full $258 million to finish the project?
Roughly, yes.
Yeah.
We'll borrow for the cost of that project.
Okay, but it'll do it after the 85 that you get on June the 8th, then there'll be one more time, and that should finish it off.
That will finish off the project, Unit 3 rewiring, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? We'll just stay there. Item number 17, page 144 on your agenda, energy cost adjustment forecast. Mr. Broking?
Yes, this is a presentation that both for water and energy that shows where the various expenses in broad categories go as a percent of each dollar that the energy and the water department pays. In this energy presentation is short. It's only one slide. The water department's a little more complicated, so there's more slides involved. And I think I've previously provided this energy presentation in one of the ECA presentations a few weeks back. But we're really talking revenue and expenses for energy and water, and then water's broken down between what's funded by rates and what's funded by the water transfer. So energy cost as a percent of the average system rate, you can see power supply is almost half of it. The next largest component is O&M, and capital and debt service combined is not quite a quarter, a little over 20%. And then going over to water, breaking out the revenues. Water rate funded revenues are 55%. The next big chunk is the water transfer. And then there's three much smaller ones that comprise about 13%. And the expenses, the water rate funded is almost 3/4 of the expenses. Water transfer about 20% or 1/5. And then Western Farms and customer funded, most of which on customer funded is reimbursed, is about 10%. So who funds the water sales revenue? It's the ag customer, 90%. Cities is the next largest at 5%. But 90% of every dollar the ag customer provides on the rate schedule. And then a breakdown of the expenses for the water rate funded portion of the business. O&M is 83%. Capital and debt service combined is a little over 10%, and G&A of about 6%. Then the water transfer revenues, San Diego County Water Authority provides about 3/4 of it. Salt and sea mitigation about 10%. We've been very successful through the work of Mr. Garber and our outside insurance consultant, Mr. Alan Tyler, of recovering a large share of our legal expenses on the QSA. So for 2010, we had a very good year, and it was about 12% of our revenues.
Thank you, Mr. Garber, for your outstanding work.
Oh my God.
And then the breakdown of the water transfer expenses, there's a little, as you can see, a lot more categories of expenses. The fallowing program, a little over 1/3. Debt service, about 15%. Environmental, 15%. And everything else, I think, is under 10%. And that concludes my presentation.
Questions, comments from the board?
Yeah, Greg, if you could go to slide 6. It shows that the cities are providing 5% of the water sale revenues, and that is accurate, but this is based on dollar sales. If we looked at straight out acre feet of water consumed, We're talking about, rather than being 5%, it'd be somewhere more like 3%?
It would be less than 5, and you're probably right. It's probably in the 2 to 4% range.
So this graph has expanded over the last few years as we've raised the industrial and municipal water rates.
They are paying a higher rate than an ag customer, yes.
Right, thank you.
Do you need staff approval to receive these, or just information?
This is just information.
Information? Okay, thank you. Okay, go on.
This is also for information. Some of it we've discussed previously, so I'll go over it pretty quick. But one thing will be new is I've promised the board an energy department forecast, and I'll touch briefly on that today. It's our 5-year forecast that we use for our planning purposes, and then I would say within the next month or so we'll be in front of the board with the water department's long-term forecast. But today it's just the energy department. I'll talk a little about the Rate Stabilization Fund and the ECA and Option 4 that will be discussed at the public hearings next month. I won't spend too much time on the formula. It's the one we currently have on our books. And then I'll talk about the 5-year forecast. So in April of this past year, the board approved $46.5 million of deferred revenue to be transferred in Rate Stabilization Fund. That brings our total into the Rate Stabilization Fund of $100 million, and that money will be used to offset revenue shortfalls or expense increases. Option 4, just to reiterate, and we'll be discussing this on 2 rate hearings in June. There's no adjustment to the base rate in 2011. We're going to float the ECA using the 2002 board-approved formula. What that will do, effective July 1, 2011, will decrease the ECA to 4.19 cents from 5.01. And then, as part of the 2012 budget, we'll reset the 2012 ECA rate. This is the formula that I don't believe has changed since 2002. If you look at the calculated ECA based on our forecast, that's what we think it will be from 11 through 15. You can see there's a drop from 12 to 11, and then there's a slight increase in 13. In the last 2 years, there's some much larger increases as we start to forecast higher power supply cost or variable power supply cost. We presented 4 different options as part of the ECA process. We're moving forward with option 4, but I just wanted to show on each of the options the total revenue that will need to be collected under either option will have to be pretty much the same, and all those numbers or amounts are about within 1% of one another. Because the expenses don't change, what really changes in those options is when you collect the money. And so with option 4, based on our current forecast, and as we all know, those forecasts change over time and they will be updated. And we've had this discussion internally with the Energy Department manager that the first 3 years we feel a lot more comfortable with because we're able to hedge a lot of the gas cost. But after that, the gas costs are based on the forward curve and what is really a consensus projection of the experts in their field, and that's what we use in the outer years. So you'll see in 11 a little over 13 cents. In 12 it drops down because we expect ECA costs to go down, rises a little in 13, and then we're forecasting increases of 14 and 15, and over the last 2 years that's roughly a 19 or 20% increase from 13 to 15. And this is our projection of what we've been working with for the next 5 years. And if you look at the energy cost, you'll see that's goes up considerably from the forecast. In 2010, to give you an idea, we're a little under $210 million. So we're forecasting those costs rising about $57 million between last year and 2015. What we've done, we've set our rates to maintain the board direction on maintaining coverages and cash available. And as you can see, cash available at line is right around $100 million for all of those years. I think in this forecast in 2014, yes, we end up using all the rate stabilization money. We use some every year from 2011 through 2014, and that helps us maintain our rates and also maintain our cash levels. And so, like I said, we'll have more next month on the ECA presentations and the hearings, but I wanted to give this to you in advance so you could just start thinking about it.
Questions, comments? Director Desert?
Yeah, Greg, could you go to slide 9? And it shows with the asterisk for 2014 and 2015, the single asterisk is 11% base rate increase. A double asterisk for 2015 is an additional 10% base rate increase?
Yes.
Is that including the utilization of the rate stabilization account?
Well, it does in 14, but we run out of, we used the $100 million in 2014, so there is no rate stabilization forecasted after 2014.
So there's going to be, this is projecting 11% base rate increase in addition to us running out the remains of the rate stabilization account.
Yes, and there will also be an ECA increase also.
An ECA increase. And these increases and projections are consistent with the past presentations we've seen, even though this option 4 wasn't one of those.
Well, it changes over time. When last year we were projecting rate increases in 13 and 14, although it's at a smaller amount than what we're projecting now. We've pushed that out a year. And there's a lot of factors that go into that, one of which is 2010 was a good year and we were able to put more money in the rate stabilization fund, which will help us defer rate increases.
Thank you.
I have a question. On 2011, on your page, slide 7, 2011, you have calculated ECA 419, 2012, 406, 415, which is below 419.
Right.
And then 454. So if we're using this money as far as just for ECA fluctuation, how do you run out of $100 million? Or how does $100 million finish in 14 or, yeah, would you say 14 or 15? 14.
Yeah, you're not using it. I'm sorry.
Have you gotten, again, I've asked this question, have you gotten permission from the board to use the rate stabilization fund money into base rates?
No, I'm just giving a forecast of what I think needs to be done. Obviously, to use the rate stabilization money will require board action. So we're using this as a planning document only. We can't, rates cannot be increased and we cannot use rate stabilization money until the board acts. And so, but that doesn't prevent us from putting out a forecast.
And I'm sorry for being so hard direct about it, but because you've refinanced a lot of our debt and have increased our cash flow, so to speak, to be able to continue to purchase. But I'm kind of wondering if we're purchasing too much or spending too much, that because I still believe that this rate stabilization fund, the $100 million, should only be used on the variable costs and not the fixed costs. I'm not sure how the other board feels about that. So I'd like to. So we're basically saying that we are going to. So if we didn't use the money for the $100 million in the base rate, that would basically double the 11 and 10% on the base rate.
I don't know. I'd have to recalculate that, but but one thing to keep in mind is the rate stabilization money was set aside to mitigate rate increases. So it is kind of hard to have a rate increase and not use your rate stabilization money first. That's one thing our outside auditors will be looking at because we told them we wanted to match revenue with expenses. And so I'm not saying that it can't be done, but you really have to have a good plan if you're going to have a rate increase and not start using your rate stabilization money at the same time.
Okay, any other questions?
I just like to make a comment. You know, as we move forward on the ECA, and just thinking back, what components was in the ECA years ago, and we haven't changed those and so forth. But now, as we approach alternative energy, how we're going to treat that? Where is that going to be charged? So there's going to, the discussion is going to be pretty thorough, and this information is very helpful in planning on where we go and where do you put those costs.
And that will be part of our presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
There was one last on slide 10. You drove me crazy with this one, Greg. The footnote. You had projected and you had footnote 1, but I couldn't find footnote 2. Includes SCAPA debt. Where should that?
Well, that's the indirect line we include. So the second debt coverage calculation includes SCAPA debt.
Okay. Okay, 2 here. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you,
All right,
Greg.
thank you.
Moving on to item number 19, page 157, internal auditing section. Greg?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. It's been a long evening.
Yes, it has. We audited the inventory at Imperial's main store and in La Quinta, and they're each reported in a separate report. First, we'll cover the Imperial Energy store, and you'll have a chance to approve this report. At the Imperial Energy store, this year it was valued at $608,035. That's made up of 2,325 different and varied supplies and materials, ranging from everything from gloves and paper towels to transformers, poles, and switches, and everything imaginable in between. So again, it was valued at $6,608,035. When we started the day, we verified the balance at $6,608,578. The net change for all these items, over 2,000 items, was $543. That's very good metrics, very good performance for everybody involved.
Excellent. Yeah.
You can see that this is on your page 158. The balance, this is the ending balances line, is down by $1,925,815 from the previous year. They're being very conservative about their reordering of major pieces of equipment, ordering them when they need them, not when just available. Well, you make a dent in this size by focusing on the large items.
Okay.
But you can see a 3-year trend there, and even before that, it was even more. The drop was even more dramatic. But please remember that it's not about minimizing inventory; it's about right-sizing inventory. And I know the Energy Department works very hard at that. You can see that the focus there on the column towards the bottom says February 24, 2011. Net variance $543. That's a less than 1% variance. some of the differences, probably a more valid way of evaluating the variance, still less than 1%. And of the 47 items that were adjusted, there was only 5 of them that had a difference of 5% of the value and $100. And that's the metrics the Energy Department has created for measurement of their variances. So I commend them there. They all work very hard on this throughout the year. We do have one recommendation that's now, it's been standing for 2 years now, and they're almost there. And that is to rewrite policy number 1551, the annual inventory of stock material policy. We worked as a committee, all involved, and even the water department sent a representative there. Finance department was there, and I understand internal audit was there. I understand that that policy will be coming before the board probably May 31st. And I encourage you to consider that seriously. Do you have any questions there on the Imperial Energy Store audit?
No. Do you have any idea when this policy will be completed? Do you have any idea?
It's in the final draft form now, and it will come before the board on May 31st, 2011. That's the plan.
Okay. Thank you. Very good, Mr. Campbell.
I'll move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. The second one, Craig?
Thank you.
Thank you. You've done excellent work as well.
It's not just me. I show up a few days and do a bunch of research before and after and collaborate with the people involved. But it's the people out there who are working with the material day after day after day. It's not just the internal auditor. Internal auditor can work policy and procedure level, right? Make the right things, working with the people who.
Take a compliment when I give you a compliment.
Thank you. I appreciate
Just
that.
Just take it. Go on to the next one.
Okay. We audited the Energy Department's inventory in La Quinta. And also, let me point out that this material is the property of the Energy Department. The General Services has custody of it, and the Energy Department can access it with the right authorization, the right process. And that's an established process, but it does belong to the Energy Department. There has been some confusion on that. Okay, in La Quinta, there's 1,621 items at this last count, valued at $4,546,624. You can see on the next page, page 161. We started the day with a balance of $4,546,789. Our net change was $165, leaving a balance of $546,624. Looking in, there were some minor things that had to be adjusted, all under $100 and 5% of value for any given item. So using the metrics that were established by the Energy Department for measurement, they were perfect in La Quinta. They've come a long way from when we first started this in 2006. There was a 45% variance, and now they're near perfect. We had the same outstanding recommendation to update policy 1551 on the annual inventory of stock material. And there was another item to clarify with a passage on the treatment of transfers in SAP, and that will be also in this policy. And you will get to consider that policy, hopefully, on May 31st. Are there any questions?
I'll move for approval.
Is there a second? Please vote. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now we will go on to item number 20, page 164, Renewable Portfolio Standards. Dr. Koch?
Madam President, board members, the district has never established renewable energy goals. We've considered the goals several times in the past, but at this time we have not, at this moment, the district still does not have any goals. So we've put together a resolution establishing the goals. And do I have to read the resolution? That essentially say the district is in support of SBX12, that we're going to take achieving our renewable energy requirements seriously. We're going to do it with renewable energy from resources located within Imperial Valley and Coachella Valley to the greatest degree feasible, and we're going to minimize the rate impacts on the retail customers. We're looking forward to acquiring additional renewable resources, and at the June 14th meeting, I believe, Mr. Kelly has agreed to let us do a workshop to show how we're going to meet the renewable resource goals in accordance with this proposed resolution.
Could I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll move to approve resolution, but I think it's 12-2011, right, Gloria? Because it says 2001 on this resolution. Okay. Move
Is
for
there a
approval.
second?
I'll second for discussion.
Discussion?
Mr. Coe, where would you put this 7 to 10% increase in energy costs created by renewable energy in the ECA or in the fixed?
I believe it should be in the ECA.
So will these numbers change from what Mr. Broking?
No.
From 419 to up because of the green energy costs?
The numbers that we provided to Mr. Broking, which he used in those presentations, included what we believe is going to be our cost of renewable resources. That includes Sun Peak Solar, our small hydro facilities, Green Hunter additional solar power, biogas, and renewable energy credits.
And for my own information, is it your opinion then, that natural gas will decrease even lower the next couple of years? Because we are creating contracts with with solar and these other entities at a higher cost per megawatt.
That's correct, sir. If we, in round numbers, renewable energy today is about $100 to $110 per megawatt hour. Non-renewable or gas-fired resources today are in the $40 to $50 range. So in rough terms, renewable energy is twice as expensive as non-renewable energy. Now, with El Centro 3 coming in, we have the ability to bring in biogas resources, and this will be the focus of the workshop in mid-June. But biogas gives us the opportunity to bring in renewable resources at about $70 a megawatt hour. In other words, much less than we would pay for other types of renewable resources. Second, you're really starting to see the impacts of our hedging program going out. That when you start a hedging program, you have to start somewhere. You can't just say, gee, the forward curve is going down. You have to start hedging, and then you start laying in additional purchases as you go forward. The market's been declining since 2008, hence we've been able to hedge. Well, the market has been declining since 2009. And so we've been able to start hedging out. So now we look forward, and our gas prices in 2010 were less than 2009. Our prices in 2011 are less than 2010. Our prices in 2012 are less than 2011. And our prices in 2013 are less than they are in 2012. In other words, if we were just going out today with nothing but fossil fuels, our costs would continue to go down. Okay, so our non-renewable portfolio is declining in cost, and even if the natural gas market today were to start moving back up, for 2 years our costs would continue to go down. But then it would catch up to us, and then the market would go up.
Well, Yeah, I think that's great news. When you have a chance, maybe we can get together, because I'd like to see, out of the $100 million, I'm guessing about $80 million is going somewhere into fixed costs. See where that's going to be going in the next 2 or 3 years.
That would be fine, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Director Hanks?
Yeah, I've got a couple of requests. One, could you kind of show us maybe graph form or something, so if the price of fuel spikes for whatever reason, at what point would the renewable be a savings? I mean, kind of a, you understand what I'm saying?
It's generally around $12 gas.
Okay. We were there one time.
And at the end of 2009, renewable resources were less expensive than traditional fossil fuel resources.
Okay, and the second item, are you getting any reports that some of the renewable prices coming down, being more reasonable?
Yes, sir. I believe I sent not by a whole lot. I mean, for Sun Peak, we paid, I believe, I don't remember exactly, around $110 per megawatt hour on a levelized cost basis. In the current RFP process that we're going through today, we're seeing it at about $102, $103. Biogas prices are actually going up a little bit because generators, who are the owners of biogas, recognize that it's suddenly a very valuable resource in today's world. I think all the board members have heard my concern about the geothermal industry, that because of this spike in commodity prices, geothermal prices have risen quicker than other costs. And biomass, because of the agricultural price boom, has also gone up a little bit. But solar prices have gone down significantly and probably will continue to fall. And if we can... Jumping ahead, I'm going to propose a small 5-megawatt facility owned by the district, essentially in the 33 acres next to the Bullfrog, the odd 33 acres. I'm going to propose that as a experimental community solar project that also allows us to look at various types of storage. Battery storage, other types of storage technologies. Should that work, then we can minimize the cost of our biogas, of solar energy, and maximizing the production of biogas here in the district, and using something that I personally don't like because I consider it a tax and nothing else, the new use of renewable energy credits, or RECs. And essentially this is going out and purchasing the capacity attribute of a wind resource. So the generator produces wind, he sells it in the ISO market, he strips off the green component, and then we can buy that. We're allowed to use up to 25% of our, or meet 25% of our green requirements in that way. Since our goal is to be both green, but continue and widen our cost advantage against other utilities, I believe we're going to have to make use of renewable energy credits to the greatest degree possible.
Well, on that cost advantage, with some of their contracts will start to expire, will you be able to show us in your projections of green energy what the difference in cost would be with those replacement contracts?
Yes, sir.
Because if my memory serves me right, some of those contracts were...
Some of them fall out. The Shell contract falls out next year, I believe. That's about $3.6 million a year that we've yet to take a kilowatt hour of energy from. Yeah. The rest of them we've pretty much gotten replaced at this point, but at your convenience, I'm willing to meet with you before the president, I'm willing to meet with all 5 of you before the presentation and go over it in advance. And then when we do the workshop, and I expect this to be a full workshop on, we're getting ready to spend a tremendous amount of money on renewable resources. Let's make sure we're all in agreement before I go out and do it.
Actually, if I might, Dr. Koch, as you can tell, has there's no shortage of either good ideas or forecasting prowess. But we won't be able to do it on June 14th because you have a rate hearing. And I think we talked about July as a standalone.
It was okay.
But
I'm sorry, you're correct.
But anyway, I think that both Mr. Broking and Dr. Koch would agree that this forecast presented tonight in the context of the ECA represents the best available intelligence today, and that while we want to plan conservatively, we also need to allow for the kinds of hard budgetary work that I think you're trying to get at, Director Sanchez, over the course of the next 4 years.
Cool.
One of the things that Dr. Koch brought up was the battery issue, and I think if the Valley ever reaches its potential in green energy, that's going to be a critical component that we look at having available.
Yes, sir. Our load is so seasonal, with very little daily peak demand from November through April, May, whenever the wind stops and the temperature goes up, that we're limited to about 65 megawatts of solar energy of capacity. During the summer months, we could take 200 or 300 megawatts. Mm-hmm. If we could somehow convert some of that additional capacity, store it, and then use it, and tie it to our daily load shape better, we could increase the amount of solar energy that we could take. But
one last request, because I think it's going to be important when we start looking at the ECA. Give us some type of projection on our capacity charges, where that's headed, and will continue to decrease. I think that'll help us in our pricing.
I was just embarrassed by that last week, so yes, sir, I will do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, cool. Now, please vote for the resolution. Yes or no? Thank you, Dr. Koch. Moving on to the last, no, not the last. We have two more. Item number 21, page 167 on your agenda. Budget schedule for 2012. Mr. Broking?
Yes, before you in the board members package is the proposed budget schedule. There are 3 main differences I'd like to talk about from what we have in the past. What you have in front of you is a schedule that would have the board vote on the final budget on December 13th. But a couple things that are different this year. One, the ECA will be part of the budget process, and so we'll be incorporating that. Another thing that we'll be doing a little different.
How's that going to work? Because is that going to slow things down, or are you going to be able to bring it in on the 13th?
No, we're going to be able to bring it in. It's just that we'll have to do some estimating for the ECA and true up later, but this will all be part of the ECA hearing. We're going to detail how we're going to calculate it, so we'll get that in front of you next month and see what you think.
I don't want to, I want to make sure that doesn't end up holding things up.
Yeah, it should not hold us up.
Actually, Director Minville, Mr. Broking and I have talked about that, and his alternative is to present the budget in phases, but to do it expedited. So whereas the summer would have been staff only before, we'll be coming to the board with pieces of the budget and beginning this robust ECA discussion early on.
Well, I mean, I like the schedule you laid out here, so I think that's very good.
If you like it, would you make a move to
I'll
approve
make a motion
it?
that we approve it.
Is there a second? Please
I
vote.
would, wait,
Oh,
okay, I got a question. One of the things that we brought up in the budget in the past, and it was late in bringing it forward, was a summary page for legal costs, where it was all pulled from the budget to a summary page. Can we look at having that implemented as part of the budget process?
I don't see why not.
Because I think Mr. Garber is going to bring a presentation for President Mendoza on the legal finances.
that would be, I asked for 30 days. That'd be the first part of June.
That's fine. We're working on it, and I know that the budget includes legal expenses. I don't care how it's broken out.
Okay.
I actually have a request. There's been some discussion at previous meetings that maybe a budget subcommittee by 2 of the board members would be formed to assist during the budget process, so that if the board is still interested in doing that, hopefully we could get up to 2 members chosen very soon, because we're getting ready to start, jumping into the budget.
Okay,
so.
Mr. Garber, can I appoint those 2 members now as part of this budget schedule for 2012?
I think that
Yes.
yes.
Okay, then I would appoint Director Hanks and Director Menville as a budget subcommittee.
Okay, thank you.
And that's part of the, okay, all right.
We'll be in touch with the board
Okay.
members to
Please
schedule
vote.
meetings.
Okay.
Madam President, Mr. Culk reminded me that although you voted on number 20, there was no motion. Could we fix that, please?
Okay, I'll move
Wait a
to
minute,
approve.
what page is that?
This is the previous item.
That's the resolution.
The resolution?
The resolution.
We didn't have,
Yeah, we voted on the resolution.
But there was no motion.
Yeah, I made the motion.
he did make the
I
motion.
made it because I told Gloria it said 2001
Yeah,
instead of
he made the
2011.
motion and
Okay,
then,
all right.
and Sanchez seconded.
I should've
Wake
kept my
up,
mouth
Dave, what's wrong with you? Keep going. 22,
more.
page 169.
Just a couple of comments on the financials. This is a quarterly statement. You'll be getting monthly after that. Both water sales and energy sales are up through the first quarter of the year. Water about 2% above budget, and energy about 4%. And those are the only things I wanted to point out this time.
Okay, questions from the
If the
board?
wind doesn't stop blowing, that you may lose that 4%.
Director Sanchez?
Director Menville hasn't even turned his...
Yeah, I'm not turning my unit on until June the 1st. Open all the windows and the breeze comes in.
Okay.
My wife loves it.
Never mind.
No. Any questions or not? May I have a motion to acknowledge?
Move to approve.
There is,
Second.
okay, who seconded? Seconded, okay, please vote. Mr. Kelly, what?
Me.
Please vote. It doesn't work.
Aye.
Please, okay, everybody, please vote again, one more time.
There you go.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, General Manager, any further business? Meeting adjourned.
Congratulations.